Greetings, my fellow Americans. This is your President Samuel Ronan speaking, and today is Recap Thursdays. I almost forgot what day we were doing. Anyway, we have a lot of news to cover, some that we couldn't cover yesterday because, well, we were doing global news, but we will be covering it today. And let me tell you, we had 2 easy days, or comparatively easy days compared to several of the streaming weeks that we've had in the past several months. But this one is gonna kick off pretty heavily, right? Not only is a prominent Democrat candidate embroiled in a Nazi scandal, but a GOP nominee is also embroiled in a Nazi scandal. And not like, oh, they're kind of like Nazis. No. Actual Totenkopf tattoos and doing Nazi stuff for the other. So that's how we're going to start the stream, and it really doesn't get that much better from there. Mr. Vice President. Oh, okay, I see what's going on there. All right, hold on. I guess my lighting up. Janky. There we go. Nope, still have a technical difficulty. All right, does it need to go here? I've only been doing this for a couple months now. All right. So I gotta make sure that Blake ends up in a deep dark CIA hole, so he doesn't undermine my presidency. But still, welcome to the stream, Blake. It's always exciting when you join us in chat. And Anna really is much better at the behind-the-scenes thing, too. Like, I have said that she should be the face of the movement as well, but she really is great on the ground. She's really good at making connections, organizing, connecting with different organizations. So, more power to her. If she doesn't want to be the face and she's going to let me be the face, then I will I will take on that role. Again, I'm the president because a woman is allowing me to be the president. And that's the way it should be. Women need to be in charge for once. Let them have a chance at the reins. Yeah, Leia can be the president when she is 35. Hopefully, everything that happens in my administration sets the stage so that she can become president and we still have a country in those many years. So, moving right into the stream. We'll start off with, honestly, I think we should start off with the Graham Platner story and the GOP lady, and then we'll go into the worldwide headlines.
Democratic U.S. Senate candidate Graham Platner facing scrutiny over a tattoo associated with Nazis. In an interview on the podcast Pod Save America, Platner says he got the skull and crossbones tattoo on his chest while on leave in Croatia during his time in the Marines. He claims he was unaware of the symbol's affiliation with Nazis until he ran for Senate and has faced a barrage of attacks. Platner says the opposition is trying to frame him as a secret Nazi, but he says this is at odds with his previous anti-fascism statements on social media and called himself a lifelong opponent.
What is that?
This?
Yeah, what's it?
Literally nothing. It's just it's a design.
Is it like a possum or I don't know.
No, it's supposed to be like a dog.
That was Graham Platner. He's a Democratic candidate running for U.S. Senate in Maine.
Why on earth is the news showing a shirtless candidate? Like, should I be taking?
Debuting the brand new ink that, as of today, has covered up a previous tattoo that resembled a Nazi symbol. The decision to replace the tattoo coming after this video of the oyster farmer and first-time candidate revealed a skull and crossbones design on his chest that is widely recognized as a Nazi symbol. Platner, who said he was unaware of the tattoos.
This is the state of politics in America, where a drunken video where you are in your boxer shorts can air on the news, You can have a Totenkopf on your chest and laugh it off as, oh, this one time when I was in the Marine Corps, I got a silly tattoo and I was dancing drunk, and not immediately be just completely rejected as a legitimate candidate. Like, that, honestly, I don't even, what at this point, like, you have to be noble, you have to be political, you have to look a certain way to be a politician in the United States. Clearly not. Clearly, when you're a 34-time felon, multiple sex offender, convicted, or not convicted, but credibly accused, violating the law, your entire friggin' campaign and followership and people that followed your campaign style are getting arrested left, right, and center for pedophilia, sex trafficking, and worse. And then on the left, well, you can just be drunk now and shirtless and have Totenkopf tattoos, and it's no big deal. It's no big, like, I don't even the sanctity of the office is out the window. Like, that is completely out the window. Grift as much as you want, people. Antifa. This is my message to my fellow Antifans, right? As your president of Antifa, go forth and just be your your authentic self and then run for office. Because clearly, it doesn't matter anymore. It clearly has no bearing whatsoever, right? Have your pink hair. Wear your heavy metal leather jackets with spikes across them. Wear your goth Victorian dresses and go out there and run for office. Because clearly image is out the window. Yeah, well, that was my point, Anna. Like, obviously, decorum is entirely out the window. And especially if you run as a Republican. Although, as a Democrat, you might face backlash from the Democratic Party proper. But if you're endearing enough, I guess even then. Look at that smile, right? Wild.
The association explained that it was the result of a drunken night out 18 years ago.
We went ashore in Split, Croatia, myself and a few of the other machine gun squad leaders, and we got very inebriated. And we did what Marines on liberty do, and we decided to go get a tattoo. And we went to a tattoo parlor in Split, Croatia, and we chose a terrifying-looking skull and crossbones off the wall because we were Marines, and, you know, skulls and crossbones are a pretty standard military thing.
Platner's explanation seemingly sufficient for Senator Bernie Sanders, who today said he is, quote, absolutely standing by his endorsement of Platner.
Can I ask you about the tattoo?
Once again, we are dealing with a collapsing healthcare system, and you were asking me about whether or not a guy should get a tattoo removed? Sorry.
All right.
Okay. So, here's the thing, too. Bernie did answer that question the way any senator or congressperson should answer a question like that. Except for if you're the person who endorsed him and you have the platform nationally to be so influential that your endorsement could swing a election, right? If I was a congressman and a veteran, right? So I'm an Air Force veteran, and they would know that. So they'd come up to me. It's like, hey, Mr. Ronan, as a veteran, how do you feel about Graham running for Senate, claiming that his Nazi tattoo was just something that Marines do? And if I answer that question or blow it off, then it is what it is, right? It's like, why are you asking me this? We have healthcare issues. We have a government shutdown. We have a rogue president who's demolishing the White House for his Epstein ballroom. Like, we have much bigger fish to fry. Or I could say, no, as a person with German heritage who also served in the military, ignorance is not justification for getting something that is a Nazi symbol. Secondly, the fact that that tattoo parlor in Croatia had Nazi symbols should be a humongous red flag. There's any number of skull and crossbones that you could get that do not look like the Nazi symbol, right? You could literally get a pirate flag. You could get the pirate flag skull and crossbones. The Totenkopf looks much different than that. Any number of things. You could have done a Grim Reaper scythe with skull and crossbones. Any number of things. Hell, you could have done a skull with crossed axes. That would have been cool. Or since you're Marines, crossed rifles. Props. This is a prop. Like, any number of things you could have done instead of getting that tattoo. Either answer would have been appropriate coming from me. But as the senator who is endorsing that guy, yeah, I need to address the issue. I 100% need to address it. Like, I do stand by my endorsement of Graham. I am deeply concerned as a Jewish senator that he had a Nazi symbol, but I am willing to believe, I am willing to take it on faith that this gentleman got a tattoo in his youth and truly, viscerally did not know the meaning of that tattoo. I will take him at his word. If it comes up down the line that he had a few other questionable actions or tattoos or memorabilia, then I will rescind my endorsement, right? He could have said that if he hasn't already. Or he could have said, yeah, I don't actually give a damn. I'm more concerned about padding the Senate with Democrats. Still a valid answer. But blowing it off when you're the endorser, oh, sorry, Bernie, not a good look. I guess they're going to show him shirtless some more. So I guess we'll go to here, though.
On other people. We see Donald Trump do that every single day. I see Graham owning this mistake, correcting it, and you know what? As someone who served in the Marines myself, he's far from the first Marine I've seen who got a tattoo that he didn't understand.
Would you?
And not to leave it on his shirtless peck, but that is very true. Many military people do get tattoos as a unit, as a squad, and have no fucking clue what they mean, because most of the Americans, I hate to say it, we as a people, we as a country are extremely ignorant to culture and symbols. Very ignorant to culture and symbols, because we aren't taught about culture and symbols, because we are getting taught a sanitized colonial imperial version of U.S. history. And we aren't being taught about the various Nazi symbols, right? This is a bit risky to do, but banned recognized Nazi symbols, right? Obviously the SS comes to mind, and obviously the swastika comes to mind. But if you see here, there's all sorts of other symbology. And this is the Totenkopf that he got. And it's not even a skull and crossbones. Like, it is a scary looking skull. And if you were really ignorant, you wouldn't know that that's the Totenkopf. But if I was going to get something permanently put on my body, I think I would make absolutely sure, like, these symbols... Oh. That these symbols... Ah, dang it. That these symbols, you know, weren't what I thought they were or could be seen as anything else. Now, what really gets shitty is with the runic symbols. I guess that didn't work the way I wanted it to. Runic symbols, like... Ah, damn it. I guess the Sonnenrand and the Alges rune and the Tyr rune, right? The Odal rune. These are all part of actual Nordic runes, which I thought I had that out and about. I guess I don't. Well, in either case, runic language is Nordic. Like, that's a part of Nordic culture and history. So if you're 6'7" with blonde hair and blue eyes, and you happen to have the Tyr rune and maybe some other runes along the line, chances are you're not a Nazi. As long as you are literally from Norway, Finland, or Sweden, right? Everybody else, if that's all you're getting, and you're getting it on your hand, your palm, your finger, it's extremely suspect. extremely suspect. Why would you pick that rune when there's, a whole alphabet? And then, of course, any of the swastika symbols, right? Like, there is no accidentally getting these symbols and then trying to pretend it's anything else, right? So, yes, he regrets the symbol, getting the tattoo, but I'm just saying, like, it's pretty hard to do that accidentally. That's all I'm going to say on that. Now, let's hear about the other
Paul
Nazi.
Ingrassia, President Trump's pick to run the Office of Special Counsel, is backing out after a series of leaked texts allegedly included him bragging about having a, quote, Nazi streak.
Oh, I'm sorry. It was the guy, not this girl. She's the content creator. My bad.
He was scheduled for a Senate confirmation hearing this Thursday. He had hoped to be the head of the agency that basically aims to keep federal workers safe from things like whistleblowing reprisals, prohibited practices, stuff like that. But growing pressure from Senate Majority Leader John Thune, Florida's Rick Scott, Wisconsin's Ron Johnson, and surely many others ended his bid. The inflammatory texts allegedly include Ingrassia saying that the Martin Luther King Jr. holiday, quote, should be ended and tossed into the seventh circle of hell where it belongs. And in another, quote, I do have a Nazi streak in me from time to time, I will admit it. Ingrassia's lawyer suggested that the text could have been manipulated and claimed that if they weren't, they were clearly self-deprecating and satirical. But that doesn't appear to be clear to everyone. These texts come less than a week after Politico reported a group of young Republican leaders traded equally racist and anti-Semitic texts that resulted in most of them losing their jobs.
Yeah. So, Republicans are sick and tired of being called Nazis, and yet all of their major organizations and many of their organizations and the people within them and many of the people being nominated to positions of power are Nazis. So it's like, even Pete Hegseth has Nazi symbols and white supremacist symbols on his body tattooed. So, like, and it's good to know that all of those young Republicans, or the majority of them that were leaked, did in fact lose their jobs, because that's what you fucking deserve. That's America. Land of the free, home of the brave. Free speech, but not free from consequences, right? So it is reassuring and refreshing that these Nazis or Nazi wannabes are getting their just desserts. And that's why I wanted to start off our stream strong with that. And I guess we had another longer in-depth video about that as well, but I think that's pretty much covered. If we want to make fun of nominees being dropped because of their Nazi affiliation and beliefs, also, I have said some pretty self-deprecating things, but I have never uttered the phrase, yeah, I feel like I have a Nazi streak in me sometimes. Like, it's like, yeah, man, I'm feeling a little grapey. I'm feeling a little SAE. I'm feeling a little racist, you know? I have a racist streak in me. Like, these are, and of course, once I post this online, it's going to be able to clip me saying those phrases out loud, and then they're just going to run with it, right? Out of context. And of course, my supporters, you guys will have my back, and I appreciate it. But that's how asinine that is. The normal thing that you would say is like, I have a mean streak. I have an aggressive streak. I have a revolutionary streak. I like to smoke from the flames of a burning empire to light my cigar. You know, those are things that I would say, and that maybe normal people would say, except for, the ashes of a burning empire. But, nobody says blatantly racist, blatantly dangerous things like Nazi affiliation unless you truly believe in that stuff. People don't accidentally do the salute, right? People don't accidentally grow a mustache like this. People don't accidentally say blood and earth in language, or bringing up 1418 or $88 for that matter. People don't just randomly price things at $88 or bringing up the number 88 whenever they can. Like, those are not normal behaviors. Right, the 14 words. People do not act like that. People do not naturally do those things. And to try and write it off as satire or self-deprecation, nah, that's insane.
Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The International Court of Justice has ordered Israel to restore access to the United Nations to deliver food and other basic necessities into the Gaza Strip. The advisory opinion from the UN's top court also found Israel had not provided evidence to back its claims that the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, known as UNRWA, lacked neutrality, or that a significant number of its staff members were members of Hamas. Yuji Iwasawa is president of the International Court of Justice.
In its final section on international humanitarian law, the court explains that custom international law prohibits the use of starvation of the civilian population as a method of warfare.
Israel condemned Wednesday's ruling, said it would not.
Why is she wearing a 17th century judge wig? And why is she the only one wearing it and nobody else? What is going on in this frame?
Abide by the court's instructions. The Trump administration also condemned the opinion, with the State Department declaring it, quote, another corrupt ruling by the ICJ, unquote. In Gaza, an Israeli drone killed a Palestinian in Khan Yunis earlier today. Officials in Gaza say nearly 100 Palestinians have been killed by Israeli attacks since the U.S. brokered truce went into effect October 10th. Meanwhile, Palestinians in
How the fuck? Like, how does anybody truly still even remotely believe in Israeli innocence at this point? They are violating the ceasefire since the ceasefire was put. The only difference between the amount of killing that has been ongoing since the ceasefire and prior to is that the numbers are 100 in 2 weeks instead of 100 a day. That's about the only difference, is that they have slowed down their killing. That's it. That is the only difference, but it has not stopped. And this is literally the result of Israeli aggression and genocide.
Central Gaza on Wednesday interred the bodies of 54 unidentified Palestinians handed over by Israel in a mass grave. Many of the bodies showed clear signs of torture and execution. This is Rami Al-Farah, who tried and failed to confirm if his cousin's body was among those handed over by Israel Wednesday.
The signs of torture and brutal treatment on the body did not allow us to tell whether it was him or not. Our message and our demands to the world are to provide us with the means by which we can determine whether this person belongs to us or to someone else.
Also, do you understand how brutal you would have to torture somebody that you could not make an identification without using DNA testing? Mind you, there's dental records and there's fingerprints. Those two, if the face is destroyed, would still very accurately determine somebody's identity, which implies that not only was the face severely destroyed, but the dental records, the mouth, the teeth, were also detrimentally destroyed, and that the hands and fingers were detrimentally destroyed to where you couldn't even recover fingerprints. That's not living in mildly harsh conditions. That's not even living in very horrible conditions. That is deliberate, violent torture and abuse over an extended period of time, if not violation of a corpse on top of that. And then Israel gave it back. And this is 54 such bodies from this batch of returned bodies to Palestinians. But the released prisoners were also suffering from amputations and severe signs of torture, neglect, and abuse. Like, the Maybe we need a Jerusalem trial instead of Nuremberg, because if Israel wants to claim the Holy Land, well, then they need to be held accountable within the Holy Land that they committed atrocities in. Because, I mean, with every new news story that comes out, with every released prisoner, with every released Palestinian or returned body, the war crimes and crimes against humanity just become that much more evident.
The Israeli army knows these bodies are connected to people, but instead of names, they put out numbers. They left something harsh in our hearts, feelings of grief. Honestly, it's hard to bury a body when you don't know whether it's the right one or not.
And they aren't even naming the bodies. They're not they're providing the names of who that body belonged to. They're using numbers, just like the Nazis did to the Jews and other political prisoners during the Holocaust. I cannot emphasize enough that every single crime committed against the Jewish population by the Nazis is being committed against the Palestinians by the Israelis. And again, Zionism. Zionism is to blame here, not Judaism, right? Not the Semitic peoples that are indigenous to the Palestinian lands or ancient Israelite lands, but Zionism. The Zionist belief, the Zionist ideology that would adopt and expand upon Nazi behaviors in modern times and then openly brag about it. The punishments that these individuals will receive, the Israeli government, the military, the politicians, and of course the Israeli citizens themselves and other Zionist entities, whatever punishment they receive will never, ever be enough for the atrocities that they perpetrated.
Israel's Knesset has advanced legislation to apply Israeli sovereignty to all settlements in the occupied West Bank, a move that would effectively annex territory Palestinians want for a future state. The move prompted rare criticism from U.S. officials, including Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who departed for Israel Wednesday in a bid to prevent the U.S.-brokered Gaza ceasefire from further unraveling. Rubio's trip comes on the heels of visits by Vice President J.D. Vance and Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner. Earlier today, Vance...
I mean, if Vance, Kushner, and Witkoff, again, Vice President, President's son-in-law, and then the Special Envoy can't control Israel, and then you're going to send the Secretary of State, that guy is also not going to be able to control Israel. It's pretty obvious who controls who in that scenario. Who has the reins? Who has the hand on the steering wheel, on the rudder? And it is very clearly Israel. And the fact that that is the case, and that it is becoming more and more blatantly obvious on the world stage that America bends to Israel instead of the other way around, should be terrifying to everyone on earth. Because that means if Israel gets sick and tired of playing nice as such, and wants to truly start annexing all of the greater Israel territory, they might very well start forcing America to help. And now we're going to be dragged into a genocide directly instead of indirectly. Although it could be argued that we are tacitly supporting it by not interfering in the first place. So our crimes and our burden as a country is only going to multiply the more and more control Israeli leverages over America. And it goes all the way up to the vice presidency. We can even argue it goes all the way up to the presidency. So the president, the vice president, most of Congress, right? Most of the cabinet, maybe most of the Supreme Court, although I don't know how their AIPAC affiliation works out. But, there is a not insignificant number of Zionists in power at the federal, state, and local levels across this country, and it is being leveraged heavily. Not to mention the media.
Said he was personally insulted by the annexation vote, which came during his visit.
It was a very stupid political stunt, and I personally take some insult to it. the West Bank is not going to be annexed by Israel. The policy of the Trump administration is that the West Bank will not be annexed by Israel. That will continue to be our policy. And if people want to take symbolic votes, they can do that. But we certainly weren't happy about it.
Which goes to show, again, if the vice president of the United States of America, with all of the power and backing of the president, went to Israel himself, and then Israel looked him in the eyes and then voted to annex Gaza, knowing damn well that goes against the administration, that is a power move. That is an absolute power move. And the fact that the only thing he can say about it is what he said, and that I don't think Trump has taken any actions whatsoever to follow through, kind of proves the point.
Separately, Israel's Supreme Court Wednesday further delayed ruling on a petition calling on Israel to allow foreign reporters access to Gaza. The Foreign Press Association said it was disappointed by the additional month-long delay, which it blasted as a stalling tactic. Meanwhile, a group of 27 Democratic lawmakers has written to Secretary of State Rubio and U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee, urging them to secure the release of Mohammed Ibrahim, a teenage Palestinian-American citizen from Florida. He was arrested by Israeli soldiers who blindfolded and handcuffed him during an early morning raid on his family's West Bank home in February. Ibrahim spent his 16th birthday in an Israeli prison where he's been held without charge for nearly 8 months. The Pentagon...
Notice how her reporting, the stories, the things that she is telling us is only getting more and more bleak and more fascist. The Supreme Court of Israel continues to deny and delay reporters to get into the West Bank now that there's an official ceasefire in place. They are detaining a child and putting them in prison for 8 months. A child. And it's and 27 senators, U.S. senators, petitioning Israel is also apparently not enough to get that going. And notably, it was Democratic senators, not Republican senators. For all this talk about America first and America this and America that, there's an American being held cruelly by Israel, a child being held cruelly by Israel, an American child citizen being held cruelly by Israel, and not a single peep from Republicans at all, anywhere, at any level of government. So again, we are dealing with fascism in America, right? We are dealing with it now. It is here. It is entrenching itself. And the propaganda is being proven to be lip service, right? As most propaganda is. So we need to recognize that lip service, that propaganda is exactly what it is. And we need to start pushing the narrative that they don't stand for anything other than power consolidation.
Pentagon confirmed Wednesday the U.S. launched strikes against 2 vessels in the Pacific off the coast of Colombia, killing 5 people, and claimed without evidence the boats were carrying drugs. This follows 7 strikes on alleged drug boats in the Caribbean. In the past month, at least 37 people have been reportedly killed in international waters in U.S. strikes. In response, Colombia's President Gustavo Petro said, quote, "It's murder. Whether in the Caribbean or Pacific, the U.S. government strategy breaks the norms of international law," he said.
Which is 100% correct. And again, every single one of those sailors, or Marines, because I think it's the Marines that are posted out there, every single service member that is on those craft and obeying the orders of the president to murder with impunity people in international waters is guilty of war crimes. And that is punishable by death. In the UCMJ, the Uniform Code of Military Justice, that is a death penalty crime. All war crimes are death penalty capable crimes. And I can assure you, I will be advocating for that punishment for every single person on that ship. Every single member. Because it doesn't matter if you're an E1 or an O10. If you are on that vessel and you are in any way, form, or fashion participating in the extrajudicial murder of people in international waters, you are murdering them. That is a war crime. and you did nothing about it. You didn't refuse the order. You didn't talk to your supervisor about the order. You didn't talk to your commanding officer about the order. You didn't talk to the next hierarchy about the about the order. You didn't even attempt to contact legal or JAG or anybody. You're going to swab your deck and pretend you had nothing to do with it? No. Every single member of those ships, of those units, has a duty and obligation both to the Constitution and the oath that they swore. And of course, in our own, forget the Geneva Conventions for a second. It's in our own federal laws, our own Uniform Code of Military Justice, that you will disobey unlawful orders. I can't stress that enough. So failure to do that, failure to bring it up, is absolutely compliant. And that's not my opinion. That is federal law. So those people better be praying that I don't become president or that I don't become a member of Congress, because I will be pushing for their not only dishonorable discharge, but for their death penalty sentencing for those crimes and any other crimes that they have committed in that theater.
President Trump met with NATO Secretary Mark Rutte at the White House Wednesday, shortly after the Trump administration and the European Union announced new sanctions on Russia's largest oil and gas companies. The announcement came as Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said Trump's proposal to freeze the current front lines in the war is, quote, a good compromise, unquote. Meanwhile, Ukraine launched a strike against a Russian chemical plant on Tuesday using British long-range cruise missiles. The Wall Street Journal's reporting the Trump administration's lifting restrictions on Ukraine's use of such weapons, allowing it to strike targets deeper inside Russia. This comes as the Norwegian Refugee Council is warning millions of Ukrainian civilians could be left without heat, water, and electricity this winter due to Russian attacks on energy infrastructure. In the United States,
I mean, the only thing that can really be said about that is we are implementing policies that will prolong this conflict rather than actually do something meaningful to bring Putin to the negotiation table to actually put an end to this and restore sovereignty to Ukraine, right? There are any number of concessions that can be made and granted and given that'll benefit both the United States and Russia and the Ukraine and the EU. Right? All of these parties are now involved in Ukraine. It's no longer just Ukraine and Russia, right? It might have been possible to stop it between those two 5 years ago, but at this point, too many hands are in the pot, and everybody wants their piece. Okay, fine. So, since the reality is everybody only gives a shit about Ukraine because of their natural resources, then divvy that shit up, restore the land to the people, make a joint effort between Russia, the Ukraine, the U.S., and EU to rebuild the front lines and the other areas damaged by the war conflict, and call it a day. That would be something that Putin would be considerate of. Except he doesn't feel the need or obligation to come to that table because of people like Trump who aren't trustworthy and, of course, are extremely manipulatable. Like, it is extremely easy to manipulate Donald Trump and arguably the EU. So why would Putin even come to the negotiation table if they're not going to actually negotiate in good faith in the first place and he's winning, right? It comes down to having credibility in the international sector is how you can actually broker peace deals and treaties like this. Like, that is how you actually earn the Nobel Peace Prize, by having the credibility and trust of foreign leaders to actually sit down and broker a deal that all parties can live with and accept, rather than, some sort of ceasefire or truce that leads to a greater conflict later on down the road.
Federal government shutdown has entered its 23rd day. As a result, 60,000 aviation safety workers won't receive a full paycheck in the coming days. The authority that operates the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport is planning to provide non-perishable food items to federal workers who are struggling to buy groceries. Meanwhile, the National Nuclear Security Administration, the agency which oversees the nation's nuclear stockpile, has announced it's furloughed more than 1,400 workers, 3/4 of its staff.
So, the solution to dealing with the government shutdown and lack of pay by Minneapolis Airport is to give people beans in cans, and 3/4 of our nuclear arsenal personnel are being furloughed. That is, if we want to talk about national security and safety, that is probably one of the most detrimental things you could do to impact national security, is gut our nuclear weapons. Like, not just the fact that they are not being overseen and watched and monitored and so on and so forth, but the fact that they could be tampered with, the fact that they could be stolen, the fact that they could melt down or some other nonsense. Like, you can do a lot with a skeleton crew in the military. You absolutely can. Not arguing. You can do a whole lot less or a whole lot more with less in the military because we have a mission, right? But you never, ever, ever, ever want to do that when it comes to nuclear weapons. There is far too much at stake, especially when it comes to like the underground, the black market, or other insidious endeavors, like, I don't know, espionage, for that matter. Like, that is the most un-American first thing and the most un-making America strong and powerful again thing that you could ever possibly do. That is batshit insane. I did not know that until I right now. That is bonkers.
Capitol Hill, the Senate's 12th attempt to end the shutdown failed Wednesday. Ahead of the vote, Democratic Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon delivered a 22-hour speech warning about President Trump's agenda.
Colleagues, I'm coming tonight to the floor of this Senate to ring the alarm bells because we have become an authoritarian nation over the last 9 months. We are deep into an authoritarian takeover.
The Trump administration's dispatch.
And you know what's crazy? I saw an article about the filibuster that he was doing. Haven't seen a single video other than this one too. Again, the information war is another war that we are losing horribly. Not because people like me or you aren't interested in it, but because people like CNN, MSNBC, Fox News do not want to do their jobs, and thus it requires independent news networks or journalists or politicians being present, and filming it on their phones or with whatever devices they have and uploading it. We are losing the information war because we don't have the infrastructure to acquire the information to propagate the information. But what this senator said is absolutely correct. We can argue that we've been a fascist state for quite some time, but the consolidation of authoritarianism, that hasn't occurred until this administration, and we are seeing the consolidation phase of authoritarianism. Not the building up, not the parts coming together. It's consolidating at this point, and it continues to grow and expand and infest more areas of the country, whether that's the physical locations like cities and states, or whether that's our institutions like the fucking nuclear arsenal. We are entering into extremely dangerous territory.
Dispatching more than 100 federal agents to the San Francisco Bay Area as it seeks to ramp up immigration raids in Northern California. That's according to the San Francisco Chronicle, which reports the deployment is a likely precursor to President Trump deploying National Guard troops to San Francisco. California's Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom blasted the deployment as, quote, right out of the dictator's handbook, unquote.
Yeah, but again, Gavin Newsom, just like all the other governors where Trump is trying to deploy people, has the authority to supersede the orders of the president. when it comes to the National Guard. And the fact that none of them have bothered to do so and are just trying to get sound bites on the news is indicative of tacit compliance, right? Because at the end of the day, if you allow it to happen when you have the ability and the authority to prevent it, then you are allowing it to happen. And you're just giving lip service of resistance so that you look good in the polls and can maybe get reelected or do whatever it is you're trying to do in the future. And that is exactly why the fecklessness of the Democrats is as stark and as the much hatred that the people have for the Democrats is where it is, because we see this and we hear it just as much as people like me point it out to you. Regular laymen who have never paid attention to politics a day in their lives are seeing this like, wait, how is the National Guard being deployed when there's a governor that is there too? Like, shouldn't the governor be able to do something about it and not just talk about it? Like, regular people with no understanding whatsoever are beginning to ask these questions, and they are directing those questions at the Democratic leaders.
In Illinois, protesters confronted masked federal agents Wednesday as they carried out multiple arrests in Chicago's Little Village neighborhood in the bordering suburb of Cicero. The agents were joined by Border Patrol Commander Gregory Bovino, whose forces were recently reprimanded by a federal judge for violating a prior court order restricting the use of tear gas and other less lethal weapons on peaceful demonstrators, journalists, and clergy. Federal agents fired pepper spray at protesters who witnessed a car crash involving federal agents.
They are thugs and they could do whatever they want, and they crashed into an individual, arrested him with no probable cause, no warrant, and instead of the police department assisting the guy that got crashed, seeing if you need medical attention, they arrested him.
I mean, that speaks for itself too. The fact that ICE ran into somebody and then arrested that person, and then law enforcement arrived and allowed the arrest to continue, is absolutely beyond words. Like, that is a police state. That is a police state. Like, that if we thought the ability to just murder George Floyd in broad daylight was police state, or the NYPD openly mocking his last words was a police state, apparently there were even more lows that we could reach to where we are today. And it's not even the lowest low that we can get, because again, we're not at the stage, at the very least, where there are boots marching across all neighborhoods and streets with an active curfew in place, right? But we are at the stage of police state where police can run into you, or federal agents can run into you, and you get arrested without probable cause or any sort of due process. So we need to get this information out there as dramatically as the CNN and mainstream media who try and sanitize these stories. Because that's why there isn't civil outrage. Because the stories that are being shared on the mainstream are very, very sanitized to make it not look as bad as it is. Sure, some of the stories will be hard-hitting. Yep, this happened in an isolated incident, and this isolated ICE agent is being held accountable accordingly, right? But that's not the norm, right? The accountability part, that's not the norm. Those behaviors, though, are, and that's not what it's being reported. It's not how it's being reported, because again, the MSM is controlled by 4 companies, unless it has changed to now 3. How many companies control a majority of the media in America? So this is saying 6. This is saying 5. Wikipedia is saying as of 2011, and that's where they're getting the 6. I think recently, though, it's down to 4. So Wikipedia, unfortunately, is not a authority on that one. But see, so 3 weeks ago, okay, so 3 weeks ago, it's 5 companies, right? So it's no shock whatsoever that 5 companies that have a vested interest in conveying that capitalism is good and that authoritarianism isn't actually happening and that they're not buying elections and that governments aren't under their control would enforce stories that repeat that narrative on loop as brazenly as possible. Because the reality is 60% of Americans who work are living in poverty. ICE is the modern day Gestapo. America is committing war crimes at home and abroad. And this administration is absolutely an authoritarian regime. Those are the facts. And who is reporting it with that level of clarity and intensity? In most cases, Democracy Now!, they're doing a really good job. Al Jazeera, depending on what the story is, does a really good job. And that's pretty much it. I don't know that we've gotten consistent independent news people that don't treat these stories with kid gloves. Because even amongst independent journals like TYT and some of the others, they are treating these stories with less intensity and ferocity than they should. So, moving right along, I guess.
Here in New York, protesters marched Wednesday in solidarity with the street vendors who were harassed and detained Tuesday by federal agents during immigration sweeps targeting Manhattan's Canal Street. This is Awa Ngam, a street vendor and U.S. citizen originally from Mauritania who witnessed a friend's arrest by ICE agents. She was ordered to show ID proving her immigration status.
I mean, immigration sweeps and show me your ID. That's literally what the Nazis did. They did Jewish sweeps and said, "Zeig mir deine Papiere." Like it's not that there are parallels. These are overlapping. This isn't a parallel. These are verbatim the same actions, activities, and phrasing, no less, that the Nazis used.
I always felt safe in America. I feel safe. I love coming to America. America is losing that. And people have to say something. They have to not be scared. They have to stand up. The time is now.
Meanwhile, a Cuban man
fact,
deported by the Trump administration to the southern African kingdom of Eswatini has gone on hunger strike to protest his imprisonment in a maximum security prison there. Roberto Mosquera del Paral is among 11 so-called third country deportees sent by the Trump administration to Eswatini, despite legal challenges by human rights groups who've called the deportations a violation of U.S. and international law.
Which is exactly what they are. It's not deportation unless you had due process, for one, and for two, you go back to your actual home country. That's the deportation process. Everything else is kidnapping and trafficking. And that is what is being reported. That's where I wish she and Democracy Now! Would be a little bit more intense on using that language. They are being kidnapped and trafficked to Al Swatini Kingdom to be put into a maximum security prison instead of getting the due process and deportation whatever process that they should be getting. If there's even a legitimate crime or in deficiency to point at.
The North Carolina House of Representatives has approved a new congressional map that could give Republicans an extra seat in Congress. According to state law, North Carolina's governor, Democrat Josh Stein, cannot veto the redistricting plan. President Trump praised North Carolina's map on social media last week, saying it would give voters in the state, quote, the opportunity to elect an additional MAGA Republican in the 2026 midterm elections, unquote. It follows a similar effort by Texas Republicans earlier this year when lawmakers passed a congressional map that could give Texas's congressional delegation up to 5 more House seats. A month later, the Republican-controlled Missouri state legislature passed a congressional map that would turn Democratic Representative Emanuel Cleaver's district into a Republican-leaning seat. In labor news, the New York...
I mean, also, how can a governor not veto something? Because it would be overturned? Still, fine, overturn it. But at least at that point, the governor said, I am not going to allow democracy to get eroded. Secondly, why isn't the governor and the opposition in that state not on every single local news network pointing out the erosion of democracy that their fellows are trying to accomplish? Like, why is this brazen disregard for the democratic process not being pushed? Why? Why is nobody talking about it? Again, the answer to assuage any thoughts or concerns. Sorry, still having a little bit of brain fog here. The answer, my fellow Americans, as to why nobody is actually giving opposition words or actions against these blatant acts of undemocratic activity is because they are complicit. Right? They are complicit. Because once they, the Democrats, regain power, they can act on the precedent that has been established by the Republicans, and then they can go ahead and redistrict in their favor. That is all this is. To them, it's a game. To the Democrats, to the DNC, the Democratic National Committee, all of this is either a game that they can play later on once the blue wave hits, or B, they want an authoritarian takeover of this country because they think they can ingratiate themselves with the movement so that they can still retain what power they have. Either way, it's disgusting, unconstitutional, and a crime against democracy. And I cannot wait. I cannot wait to leverage those charges against them.
New York Times reporting Amazon's planning to replace more than 500,000 jobs with robots. The company's internal documents also reveal Amazon's robotics team plans to automate 75% of the company's operations. A Senate report released earlier this month, spearheaded by Senator Bernie Sanders, warned artificial intelligence and automation could destroy nearly 100 million jobs over the next decade.
To the point, there are 155 million workers in America. Meaning, if 100 million jobs got replaced by automation or AI, that would only leave 55 million jobs left between the 155 million that currently exist. Meaning, everybody's going to be fighting over those same 55 million jobs. Now, here's the problem with that statement outright. Why is automation and AI going to destroy our livelihoods rather than give human beings more freedom and rest? Why is that instead going to be detrimental and destroy our economy and destroy our ability to live and survive in this country? Right? That's the conversation that isn't being had by anybody, shockingly enough, by Bernie Sanders, who's an avowed socialist. Okay? So, again, in a society that actually functions, automation is a great thing. So would AI if it wasn't, this sludge that we are seeing from ChatGPT. On principle, the technology of artificial intelligence and the technology of automation should lift so many people out of poverty and make it so that so many less people have to work for 40, 50, 60 years of their lives to simply exist. What it should do is free the shackles of the working class and deteriorate those chains forevermore. But instead, under a capitalist society, it just gives that much more reins of power and control to the capitalist class. And that's what's not, of all the things not being talked about, that is one of the scariest things not being talked about. So, of course, here on this stream, we're going to talk about it. We need automation for the future. We need artificial intelligence for the future. Real artificial intelligence, not ChatGPT sludge. We need to remove the shackles from the working class. And a functioning society would work towards those goals. We must dismantle capitalism. We must remove its claws, its appendages from every facet of our society and our livelihoods. Because if we don't, the future is literally that bleak. 2/3 of the entire job market will be gone, and every American will be scrambling for the remaining third, which means skyrocketing poverty, skyrocketing lack of access to healthcare and education, skyrocketing crime. Never mind whatever crime you think is happening now. We're going to see Mad Max levels of crime. We're going to see dystopian nightmare futures. We might very well see the actual Hunger Games. At that level, where there's only a third of all jobs left in America, and everybody's scrambling to make a living because we're gonna gut social programs and we're not gonna have social safety nets, we're not gonna have universal healthcare or education. I mean, it could also be the death race future, right? That any number of those dystopian outcomes will occur if we allow automation and AI to flourish under capitalism. Otherwise, it should be our saving grace. It should be something to celebrate that 100 million jobs could be replaced by automation and AI. That should be something we should all be striving for. But unless it's under a Ronanist economy or a socialist economy, it will only spell the death of the American population.
Peru's interim president, Jose Heri, is declared a 30-day state of emergency after weeks of anti-government protests led to the impeachment of the previous president. The state of emergency in Peru gives the government the power to send the army to patrol the streets and curb the right to protest. Peruvians had been demonstrating over the rise in organized crime and extortion. Over the past month, more than 200 people were injured in the protests. And White House officials say the entire east wing of the White House will be demolished for the golden gilded ballroom, which President Trump said yesterday will now cost $300 million, up from $250 million, which is up from $200 million. That's despite this pledge made by President Trump in July.
It won't interfere with the current building. It'll be near it, but not touching it, and pays total respect to the existing building, which I'm the biggest fan of. It's my favorite.
The East Wing.
So obviously that was a lie. We knew that was going to be a lie, but again, the fact that it's happening during the government shutdown and that MAGA is screaming until their face turns blue about removing Confederate statues because of history isn't even batting an eyelash that the East Wing has been demolished overnight to build the Epstein ballroom. Like, that's the level of hypocrisy in this movement is breathtaking, but that's not where we need to focus our messaging. Hypocrisy isn't going to rattle these people in the slightest. Not the voters, and certainly not the elected officials, because the officials know that they're hypocrites. The voters are just happy that other people are suffering, right? But what we need to recognize, what we need to do in our messaging is highlight how this administration continues to betray their promises to their base by doing things like this, which could be used instead. That money could instead be used to fund SNAP or to help with other infrastructure initiatives or any other thing under the sun beyond this statue or memorial to his narcissism.
Wing's demolition comes as the National Trust for Historic Preservation has asked the Trump administration to pause construction until the National Capital Planning Commission has completed its review of the project. In a letter, the trust said it was concerned the proposed 90,000 square foot ballroom will, quote, overwhelm the White House itself, unquote, since the White House is 55,000 square feet.
Well, and the fact that they did this while there are processes, I mean, again, this administration acts first, deals with any consequences later, if there are any consequences. Again, the company that they hired should be fired. They should be charged. They should be arrested with destruction of historical materials, right? Like, again, the criminality of this administration, whether we're talking about blatantly committing war crimes off of the coast of South America, right, Colombia and Venezuela, or whether we're talking about violating the Emoluments Clause, or whether we're talking about demolishing the East Wing of the White House, right? There is no low for this administration that they will not sink to. There is no act that they will not commit for their own purposes. We need to start highlighting that in our messaging. And I get it. It's going to be extremely difficult to do that on like a syndicated news network. But that's why I encourage each and every single one of you to share this information, the stream, the campaign, like Democracy Now! Coverage, right? The things that we talk about, that's what you need to be sharing within your circles and encourage them to share that as well. Grassroots movements work, but they require dedication. If we don't have funding and we don't have manpower, then dedication is the only thing we have, right? Raw elbow grease, right? But except it's typing. So I know it's asking a lot. I know it feels overwhelming or like this isn't going to accomplish anything. I know that because I feel that way too. But I promise you, I can prove to you historically that grassroots movements can turn into revolutions, that they can turn into overthrowing, peacefully even, corrupt institutions and administrations. But it requires action, consistency. We need to act consistently for 90 days straight with 11.5 million people, and we too can overcome this administration. But that's what it's going to take. So, is there more?
And those are some of the headlines.
No, that was the headlines, or some of the headlines from today, which is crazy because I think if you go to Democracy Now!, I think their today top stories is a daily thing, right? It's literally a daily thing. The 23rd, the 22nd, 21st, right? This is literally every single day. And it's the headlines for that day. So it's usually breaking news on top of that. Like that is, and of course Democracy Now!, 3 million subs. You know, they make an astronomical amount of money from their YouTube channel, but they have how much staff, right? They have probably dozens. Actually, we could look that up. How many employees does Democracy Now! have? 11 to 50. So they are a very small company. But that's the point. They can accomplish so much with being a very small company that they are. I'm not saying we need to repeat what Democracy Now! Is doing. We need to expand upon what Democracy Now! Is doing, and we need to get their numbers up, right? Because how many subs, let's see, YouTube, Fox News channel. For instance, Fox News on YouTube has nearly 5 times as many subs, right? And other than that, there's TYT and their offshoots. And TYT has double. So even if you combine Democracy Now! And TYT has turned into very neoliberal reporting lately. Regardless, they're the only independent news networks of any capacity that we can talk about. Their 9 million is still less than one network, one mainstream network. And if you look at CBS, they're at 6.8, CNN, they're at 18.8, which is actually larger than Fox News. ABC, ABC News. Okay, I'm sorry. ABC News. Also, even larger. So, like, all of the mainstream networks are approaching that 18, 19, 20 million mark. And all of our independent combined is maybe 10 million, right? What's another major... So, yeah, there's... Kulinski? No. Yeah, Secular Talk. He's got 2 million, but he's technically part of TYT, right? But it's his own channel. So maybe that 2 million plus the 6 million plus the 3 million, right? If we can get Hassan... What's Hassan's at? He's at 1.75. And then what? The Minority Report, that's another one. The Majority Report. Also at 2. So if we bend over backwards to find these different content creators, we as a total still are less than one of the mainstream networks. And that's what I'm talking about. When I say we are losing the information war, it's because not only is our independent networks not extreme left-wing anyway, like extremely left-wing, I should say, because we have some neoliberalism thrown in there, but combined, we still barely compete with just one of the major networks. And those major networks are all basically in cahoots with each other, right? Because, okay, that's just the American news networks. Once you start getting into the BBC and, hello? Really? Oh, okay, I guess that one's big the same way. I don't know what the German network is. Deutsche Post? Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, other countries that we still respect, like the BBC, and I think if it's not the Deutsche Post, then it's something else. But, like, there are other networks that we would even reference from Europe or Asia. And those main networks are larger individually as our entire combined independent news movement. And that's what we need to overcome. Ola Razor. I have never followed the news channels before, and I won't follow them anymore. Distorting the facts, continuous lying, this is what they do. There is no hope left in them. Correct, there isn't, if you're already aware of that fact. But if you're not aware of that fact, if you're a normie, if you're just a regular person who thinks that the news isn't lying to you because it never lied to you in the past, and, oh, we can't be propagandized in America, then it is a huge problem. They're out of what? We just looked at 5 or 6 of them. There's a combined 100 million subscribers across those major news networks between left-leaning and right-leaning. And there's 270 million adults in America, and how many of them even give a shit about the news, right? And people who vote, that's around 120 to 150 million on presidential election cycles. Let's see. How many total votes cast in 2024 POTUS election? Let's see if we can... So 150 million. So there's 100 million subs across the various news media, and that's 50 million less than the total vote during one of the most detrimental election cycles of our nation's history. Right? So the people who follow the news are probably the same ones who vote, plus, give or take however many who follow, like, the independent news. So if there are that many news channels on YouTube, right, that are American-based, you might end up seeing a total subscriber base between 150 million and 200 million, because surely people will follow multiples, right? So you can average it out to maybe the entire voting base will at least follow one news channel. And those are the people who vote. So we need to expand that awareness, that engagement, right? Get out the vote in more ways than one. Get out the news, get out the information, get out the activism, get out the Antifa, and then, yes, get out the vote. I am a normal person, but I don't think I'm dumb enough to be easily manipulated. Well, here, full disclosure, I thought the same thing, and I was active duty Air Force, and I thought my policies were conservative. My left-wing policies, the things that I've been sharing from time to time on stream, going to my website, I thought those were conservative ideals because those ideals can serve and support and protect and defend the Constitution and the American people. And that's what I thought conservatism was. So, unfortunately, political ignorance is the bigger hurdle we have to overcome, because when it comes to ideology, people claim that they're moderate and then regurgitate either neoliberal or MAGA rhetoric. That's not moderate. That's fascism. That is fascism. It is authoritarian on the Overton window scale, right? If you're a true moderate, then chances are you're socially liberal and fiscally conservative. But authoritarianism is neither of those things. They just care about control. And if you're like, well, I support the police, ICE, and I think trans people should be legislated into non-existence, and I think criminals shouldn't have due process, that's not a moderate stance. That is authoritarianism. That is where the Democrats and the Republicans are right now. But America's problem is bigger than just voting, because the two parties are fighting each other, and those who control America are the AIPAC. No, I mean, you're not wrong. I'm not arguing that. We have bigger issues than just voting. That's why I was saying the political ignorance, the understanding of politics, period. That, what policies are, what politics is, how to engage, how to understand, just even understanding when something is misinformation. We do not have those skills broadly as a society. And hell, even I fall victim to misinformation on Facebook from time to time. I'll share an article, and it turns out that it's just rage bait. Even though it's something like ICE kidnaps and arrests 4-year-old, which we have seen actual footage of ICE kidnapping and arresting a 4-year-old to lure out parents. That particular article was just rage bait, right? All the other instances of where it happened wasn't, but that one was rage bait, and that then feeds the whole, well, see, you're not credible because you shared that uncredible source. It's like, no, motherfucker. They're doing this shit so much that seeing it happen again and again is me trying to provide awareness and expand the exposure of this story, because that's what it's going to take. People need to be exposed to the horrors that are unfolding in the United States of America, or else the complacency that has held us in check is going to go unchecked. And that is the problem. So I'll give it a second, because I don't know if you're responding to any of what I just said, and I don't want to be rude and ignore you as we go to the next video. Oh, well, I'm going to drink this, help my throat a little. I really don't understand what makes it hard to comprehend. All those who won the elections were originally supported by AIPAC. Isn't it clear that they are the ones controlling the country? You would think that, except all of those major news networks that I just described never, ever mention AIPAC affiliation. Never. They never do. And if they do, it's for a brief snapshot, and it's usually in celebration. Again, the lady yesterday on CNN who was celebrating the Japanese PM who revered Margaret fucking Thatcher, right? That was on CNN, or no, CBS, Good Morning America, right? So if they're going to talk about AIPAC at all, or Israel at all, it's always going to be in a warm, fuzzy way, which is propaganda. So even if they talk about AIPAC, it's not going to be from a position of highlighting how corrupt and influential they are, but rather that they are part of the Israel alliance and is a show of solidarity with the people of Israel. You see what I'm saying? That's the propaganda that makes that very obvious thing not so obvious. All right. I guess these are some highlights of the New York City debate.
Both my adversaries have decided to bump chests with President Trump to prove who's more macho. You can't beat Trump. He holds most of the cards. He's already cut federal funding for Medicaid, for the SNAP program, and is threatening to cut funds for NYCHA. So if you're all of a sudden going to get adversarial, you're going to lose. And who gets hurt? The people of New York City.
That was the most cowardly thing I have ever heard a political candidate vying for such a high-profile position to say. That is sheer cowardice. Well, I'm not going to bump chests with this tyrant because I would lose. Vote for me to represent you in New York. Like, What? No. And honestly, my rebuttal, and that's exactly what Andrew Cuomo looks like. Let's just enjoy this for a second. Anyway, if you're going to contrast yourself with any other leadership and you append that by saying, but they have all the cards, so you would be a losing battle to even try and face them. Like, way to just admit that you're not just licking the boot, right? You're literally deep-throating the boot. What a fucking loser. Everyone who won from the Republican or Democrat Party was given tax money to Israel. They didn't use it to improve infrastructure. They didn't use it to improve healthcare. Am I wrong? No. They used it to kill Palestinians. Something weird if you think about it. No, I agree. It is weird, but it's propaganda. I don't know if we're not communicating or if you're just writing out your thoughts before I'm responding to them. But the issue is propaganda. We agree on the problem. The problem is Israel influence in America. We agree on that. And we also agree that it is extremely weird how deeply influential it is. But the problem, the answer to why that is the case, is propaganda and the fact that our media, our legislative, our judicial, and our executive branches at all levels of government are complicit. They are all working together to achieve that propaganda, right? If it was just at the national level, then maybe the local news would be able to trickle out some better information, but they don't. Local news media will parrot the same Israeli Zionist talking points, and that's part of the problem. It is that deeply insidious. It's not just at the national level or even the state level, it's also the local level. That is how deeply entrenched the propaganda is. Also, look at this fucking clown's face some more. What a loser.
We have to confront President Trump. He is hyper-aggressive, and he is going to overstep his bounds. And you are going to have to confront him. And you can beat him. I confronted him, and I have beaten him. He was going to quarantine New York during COVID, and I stopped him. He was going to cut aid to federal programs, and I stopped him.
Look, Donald Trump ran on 3 promises. He ran on creating the single largest deportation force in American history. He ran on going after his political enemies, and he ran on lowering the cost of living. If he wants to talk to me about the 3rd piece of that agenda, I will always be ready and willing. But if he wants to talk about how to pursue the 1st and 2nd piece of that agenda at the expense of New Yorkers, I will fight him every single step of the way.
Andrew, you didn't leave. You fled from being impeached by the Democrats in the state legislature. Leave. You fled. Eric Adams, this city of yes is on steroids, and he went wild taking care of his developer friends as he knew he would be one and done. I told you he was corrupt. I told you there would be chaos, and I warned you in 2021.
I look forward to being a mayor for every single person that calls this city home. Not just those who voted for me in the Democratic primary, not just those that vote for me in this general election, but all 8.5 million New Yorkers. And that includes Jewish New Yorkers who may have concerns or opposition to the positions that I've shared about Israel and Palestine.
I hear some people out there saying that...
You know, I gotta give credit to where credit is due, though. I am extremely wary of Mamdani. I am very wary of him. But at least he does know how to challenge himself being challenged. He does know how to address concerns and adversity. He is a good speaker, and he's really good on the debate stage, but he keeps walking back some of his policies or watering them down the longer that this election process gets guts. And that's what concerns me. He should be doubling down and expanding his ideology, not watering them down or walking them back. But then, of course, in contrast to Siwa and Cuomo, I mean, he's the only adult in the room, Mamdani. I mean, you got this sociopath saying he'd rather kiss the ring and lick the boot, and then you got Andrew Cuomo, who is very much so a corrupt politician, the very face of a corrupt politician, right? So it is a no-brainer who to vote for out of those 3. But it is concerning that those are the 3 that we got. You know what I'm saying? Anyway. And at least Mamdani is young and his mindset is clear. He wants to support the residents of New York, not care about Israel. No. And that's what I'm saying. I am wary of Mamdani. I don't hate Mamdani. I am not going to disparage Mamdani. I am not going to hate on Mamdani. What I am going to do is criticize Mamdani from the same level that I would want to be criticized. All of these streams, I have been extremely harsh and extremely militant about the death penalty for ICE agents, for the military murdering people in international waters, for the myriad crimes that this administration has committed. If I end up getting to the general of this congressional race and I start walking those things back, I expect each and every single one of you to hold my feet to the fire. It's like, well, where was Sam Ronan, the Sam Ronan we were supporting 3, 4, 5 months ago? Because this Sam Ronan was about that life. He was talking about brimstone and motherfucking fire, burning this shit to ashes and sowing salt in the fields, right? Where's this guy? You know, why are you only talking about, okay, life sentences or 10 years penalty or even worse, something like grandfather clauses with probation, right? If I ever start watering my rhetoric down to saying, you know what, maybe instead of the death penalty, we can just give ICE a chance, a 12-month period to reform. Like, please, get a real version of these and take me out. Because either I already have a prop to my head or I have completely sold out. And either one of those things is detestable. So, he was saying it clearly, but I really hope that Mamdani means what he says. That's the thing. I don't believe he means what he says, based on my own experiences with Mamdani. Because Mamdani literally said he would detain Netanyahu if he came to New York under international law, which, again, has happened. And as a state representative, which he currently is, a state representative, I'm fairly certain that does give him special powers to, at the very least, propose that in the New York Senate. Or is he a state senator? I think he's a state senator. Whatever it is, he has the ability to propose that as a stance for the state of New York to do that even in the United Nations, right? So that's what I'm getting at. There's a lot of things he can actually physically do to back up his rhetoric that he isn't doing, if that makes sense. So these highlights, I'm kind of, I thought I guess that is exactly what they are, is highlights where it's the most brazen takes that we can find. Yeah, it's not blind trust. Many leaders have said it to America, but they didn't do anything, right? And there are many things that they are powerless to do, but they can at least take actions to do it, right? Like, could I propose legislation as a congressman to hold every single ICE agent criminally accountable for crimes against humanity, violating the 14th Amendment, violating the 4th Amendment, and 5th and 6th? Could I write that legislation and bring it to a vote? Absolutely. Will it get supported? Absolutely fucking not. And I know that. You know that. The people who voted for me will probably know that. But at least I did it. And then, because I did it, and because it got struck down hilariously, I can then take that document, the fact that I did it, the fact that it is now in the congressional record, that the 434 other congresspeople voted against that resolution, I can now go on Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, CBS Morning America, Ellen DeGeneres, Kelly Clarkson, Joe Rogan. I could go on, what's another I could go on TYT, I could go on Democracy Now!, right? I could go on the Majority Report, and I could say, I did this. You can call it a stunt if you will, but now there is historical evidence that 434 other Congress members are fascist bootlicking scum that are complicit with this administration, and I think that is something that the American people should be aware of, and that is something that they should be disgusted by, and that they should share that outrage and disgust as many times as they can in a day by contacting their congressional members on this website, doing it this way with this format. It is the grounds for a movement. Even if it is a complete abject failure in the location, in the the place of power and authority where it belongs. Even if it fails there, it can still be used as a messaging tool, as a tool for information. And that is how we start fighting back. And that's what I would like to see from the Mamdanis or from the AOCs or from the left-wing leaders of this country, because they're not even doing that. And that's the issue. As a Gen Z, I believe we need to change a lot of things in America. The first thing is to unite the two parties to confront AIPAC, which is pressuring America. Well, the way you do that is by dissolving the partisan system in America in the first place. Make political parties illegal. Make political organization, like through parties, illegal. Money illegal, right? The only thing it should be fully state-sponsored elections and processes all the way through, from everything from dog catcher to president of the United States. And everybody should have the same amount of time to debate, the same access to their policy positions and so on and so forth. And if they want to go door knocking or organizing volunteers, they have the right to do so. But they cannot pay the volunteers, and they cannot pay for literature. They cannot spend money on ads. They cannot do any of these things. The only thing you can do is get people that support you to go out and help you. And you can promote yourself on social media or even the news. But you can't pay for it. Right? So, that's what I'm saying. We need to take the money out of it, and we need to set an actual level playing field. Otherwise, it'll just be the Roman patricians all over again. Right? Where only the wealthy can afford to run for office because they don't need to worry about the farm or the house or the mortgage or the car. They already have wealth that they can live off of and spend time shaking hands and kissing babies. We need to level the playing field. And one way to do that, well, the way that I've described it, is by removing wealth and that influence from the equation and giving everybody equal opportunity to speak and be heard. Without that, you don't have a legitimate democracy. Oh, okay, so they're given a specific... Okay, fine, whatever. A specific amount of money, right? But that's it. And that's the money that's already set aside at the tax level or whatever. And that's all they can spend on the campaign. There are no political ads in TV and radio. Right, that's as it should be then. This is ridiculous because the American people are fighting based on party affiliation, and some of them are ignoring reality. Well, the best solution for America is to unite against AIPAC. I mean, that would at least be a common cause. I'm not going to argue with that. That is a solution. That is a common enemy of both Republicans and Democrats and the American people generally. The problem is, if you wage war against AIPAC, they will just immediately turn against you as anti-Semitic. So, although that is a common enemy, we can and or should find additional enemies like AIPAC that we can direct our energy against. But I'm not opposed to the idea. The problem is getting the Democrats and Republicans to see it that way. You know what I mean? Whereas instead, it would be easier and far more fruitful to highlight the failings of the two-party systems and to showcase the suffering at home and the policies that are leading to it and the leaders, the elected officials that are causing it, right? That's the information war that needs to be waged. Now, billionaires is another good one. I think more people broadly understand that billionaires are not good for our society, or at least that they are acting out of pocket. But the problem with America specifically is that Americans think that they can too one day become billionaires if they get lucky with their ideas or their own entrepreneurship, or if they save their money, or if they invest in stocks or crypto. Every American thinks they're the next Jeff Bezos, and that's the issue. But is a great common enemy. I 100% agree with that. What do AIPAC and billionaires have in common? They're the same! AIPAC controls who governs America, whatever the reason for the submission, but this affects the world, not just America. I'm not arguing with you. I am not even disagreeing with you. I'm only saying that using that as the focus has its own shortfalls that need to be addressed, right? Once you can address those concerns, right? Same thing with the billionaires, because America is brainwashed into thinking AIPAC is good and billionaires are good, you have to overcome that hurdle, regardless of the fact that they are the correct enemy to target, you know? But that's why we can finally talk about universal health care and improving jobs and raising the wage and increasing the cost of living and decreasing the cost of goods. Those things are obviously symptoms of billionaires and capitalism. But those are things that are being accepted by individuals in society largely. So if we can unite under a common cause rather than against a common enemy, that could be a more unifying approach. That's what I've been trying to say. The enemy is obvious, but trying to convince people that that is the correct enemy, that isn't so obvious. But giving people something to work towards, something to work together with, something to accomplish, something to grow, something to achieve, something that might even be inspiring, that is how movements are born and how they grow. And that is also true of the MAGA movement. The inspiration is that we are going to make America great again. We are going to hold accountable these injustices that we have perceived. Women having too much power in the workplace, black people taking jobs from hardworking white Americans, and immigrants taking food off our table, right? That's inspiring to people who are racist and xenophobic and misogynistic, right? It is inspiring. Yes, I too, a mediocre white man who has everything handed to them on a silver platter in this society, can rise above again, because now I don't have to mind my manners and my P's and my Q's anymore, right? That inspired every single insecure, mediocre white man in America, because now their mediocrity, their racism is being celebrated and endorsed. And that is inspiring. So we need to inspire people in a different way. We too can achieve universal health care. We too can lower the cost of living and cost of goods. We too can restore the dignity of working in America. These are things that we can do. We can push back against authoritarianism. We can hold Trump accountable. We can hold ICE accountable. We can take control over our communities once again. We can push these authoritarian bastards out of our homes, out of our cities, and truly take care of ourselves as we were meant to. Those are inspiring things that people who want community, who want that yearning, will be inspired by. It's just a matter of growing that message. Right. But your unity is against an enemy, which is usually the playbook of conservatives and right-wing movements. Unity under a common goal or cause or belief or ideology is usually how left-wing movements and ideologies form and grow. That's my main. That's it. That's all I was trying to get across. Speaking of food pantries and SNAP, those are going to be the next two videos.
Nearly 2 million people in Illinois will be cut off from food stamps come November 1st if the shutdown continues.
The U.S. Department of Agriculture says it won't fund the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, cutting off a major lifeline to feed Chicago.
They won't. So again, this is due to the government shutdown. They refuse to fund SNAP, but mind you, they are going out of their way to pay ICE, to include the $50,000 bonuses, and the military, who are currently engaging in war crimes off of the coasts of Colombia and Venezuela. Just to put it in perspective.
Chicago area families. Our Marissa Perlman is live in Pilsen with how food banks are calling this an inevitable crisis. Marissa.
And with no end in sight for the government to reopen, food pantries are telling their clients to plan ahead, be ready, and have a plan B.
It's something that we had feared, but now it's a reality.
Without SNAP, food banks will be the first place families turn to, according to Man-Hee Lee with the Greater Chicago Food Depository.
Our food pantries are going to be overwhelmed with SNAP participants who usually, rely on that critical lifeline for support and for basic food assistance.
SNAP provides low-income residents with prepaid cards to buy groceries. The Illinois Department of Human Services says it was notified last week by the USDA that November November benefits won't be funded unless the shutdown ends.
And a lot of these we're talking about are children and also older adults who aren't able to work.
That means Illinois.
So again, to put this into perspective, this shutdown is funding the Gestapo and the military, the Epstein ballroom, for the same amount of money that is on the screen right now. But it will take food out of the mouth of children and the elderly who are on fixed incomes. I cannot stress this enough, that the Republican Trump shutdown is literally taking food out of the mouths of children and the elderly to fund the Epstein ballroom, the secret police, and the military to continue to commit war crimes. These are the stories. These are the things that need to be conveyed in that manner to everybody in this country. Those are the stories that will make people realize that change must happen. If we are going to be a country, and a country of laws, and a country that has Christian values, and one of the first things we do when push comes to shove during an emergency is take food away from people, we are neither a good country nor a Christian one. Not that we are anyway, but that's not the point I'm trying to make here. You get where I'm going with this? This is heinous.
It could lose about $350 million in assistance for 1.9 million recipients statewide. Lee says food pantries across Cook County are urging families to prepare now.
We're asking them to make sure that they have a backup plan because they are not going to get the food assistance that they need.
Mind you, that is an average of $184 that people would be getting from SNAP benefits. Now, I don't know about you, but when I buy groceries, it's way more than $184 a month for me as a single adult male. It's more than $184 a month. Now, if I had a wife and 2 or 3 small children, I was a nuclear family, and I needed to pay for everybody's food, $184 a month in this economy would barely cover 1 week of groceries. And people are supposed to survive off of this. Like families, the elderly, children are all supposed to live off of $184 a month in groceries when the cost of goods are at record highs, in historical record highs. This is insane because the benefit itself is not nearly enough to sustain people, and then that little lifeline is being taken away from those who desperately need it.
At the Pilsen Food Pantry, Dr. Evelyn Figueroa says they're bracing for bigger crowds in November. For some families, their twice-a-month visit here is the only way they can put food on the table.
We're going to need to buy more. We're not going to try to give people less because that's not right.
It's a double blow.
Yeah,
for
imagine that.
recipients. The new federal law expanding work requirements to get benefits is also taking effect 3 months earlier than expected. The same week, SNAP benefits are expected to hit pause.
But see, that's the other part. People who are on SNAP benefits are also retirees on fixed incomes, and now they're going to be expected to work. That's, again, crushing society and taking away safety nets when they instead should be expanded and the money should be taken elsewhere. Like, I don't know, the secret fucking police, which has funding that exceeds that of the entire Marine Corps. Like, it's not that there isn't money that can be taken to fund these programs. It's that they are choosing to fund fascism, authoritarianism, secret police, and the military instead of taking care of the most vulnerable people in our population. And that needs to be the story. That should be the story, but it just isn't. Because again, we have 14 million voices on independent news that are trying to promote these stories, 14 million people watching independent news, and there's over 100 million watching the mainstream news, which are glossing over these pieces of information. The reason is that the country follows capitalism and no one cares if you die. Look at LA, has a huge economy, but the homeless are everywhere. No, and that is 100% true. capitalism is the crux of our problems, but you would never believe that or see it or think it based on all of the information that we are constantly being told by everybody, from the news and politicians to even our own workplaces, right? You should be grateful for having a job, and you should be grateful that we're letting you work here. That's not how any of this should work.
A human issue, and we all need to understand that none of us should be arguing over food. Food is a human right.
It is a human right, and we produce so much food globally that we could feed every single person on Earth with plenty to spare. We give away, like, okay, how many people could food scraps not sold in stores feed globally? The world squanders over 1 billion meals a day. 1 billion meals, and there are 8 billion people on Earth. So, squandering, right? So we have, on average, according to this article, as of March 27th, 2024, we produce enough food for 9 billion people. And instead of feeding everybody, we waste 1 billion meals every single day. And there is still record amounts of starvation across the globe, to include 1 in 5 children in the United States of America. It is absolutely unnecessary. But with capitalism, well, evidently it is. So we'll do one more video on the SNAP benefits. The distribution of salaries is not fair. How can a person with children receive a salary much lower than what they spend? The rich receive a large salary. Well, that's, again, capitalists owning the means of production. And it's funny, too, because the higher the salary, usually the less responsibility and less work you actually do. And I can attest to that, because I've been paid 6 figures and forced to sit in a room doing nothing and then getting bitched at for being on my phone playing games or leaving work early to go home, right? But when I was getting paid barely $20 an hour, or when I was working minimum wage, I was expected to be the CEO of that storefront. So, no, it is absolutely insane, the disparity between high earners and low earners, and the amount of work low earners do compared to high earners.
Well, good evening. As the federal government shutdown enters its 19th day, the funding of the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, or SNAP, is at risk. Several states have sent out warnings that SNAP users will not get any new food benefits in November as it stands. Our Allie Baxter looked into the impact of this. He joins us live now from the Content Center. Allie.
Yeah, Charlie, although several states have given that warning, Michigan is not one of them. When we spoke to people today who would be looped in on that information, they tell us any guidance given changes daily.
It's really kind of up in the air right now.
Rachel Kugler is the coordinator for the Northwest Food Coalition, a network of 75 different pantries and meal sites across Grand Traverse, Leelanau, Benzie, Antrim, and Kalkaska counties. Right now, what she's hearing from her network of people is there's a big demand that's not going away.
A lot of it has significantly increased, especially since the summer has started and since the new year rolled around. We're expecting to see still more increases as we see inflation and costs of other goods just rise. So folks are choosing to go to pantries and meal sites and put their funds toward other costs.
In June this year, we spoke to food pantry volunteers and others who already noticed a difference, noting they see new faces every week. Some who rely on services like food rescue to supply their pantries were concerned about keeping up with demand. But Rachel says right now she's hearing more optimism.
Most of our sites are usually in a pretty good place, but we have a lot who are solely volunteer, solely donation based. So we have tried preparing them since the start of the year for these influxes, saying, you know, it's going to happen.
While they know there will be an increase.
So here's another sign of a failing economy. A thriving economy, a prosperous society, does not rely on food pantries and free meal locations in order to survive. because people can then provide their own means of food and to acquire their basic necessities. If you are forcing more and more people to go to places like this, then the economy is out of touch and out of reach for the people. Given the fact that 60% of Americans who do work are also living in abject poverty, that should, again, be the alarm that is going on. That, hey, more and more people are not able to afford food and shelter and electricity. That's a big, scary warning sign of bad things coming down the pike. So, again, it is bad in an isolated vacuum that SNAP is impacting food pantries. The story isn't that, though. The story is food pantries are seeing more and more people come, and newer people come on top of that, week over week, day over day, since this administration's policies have been put into effect. That's the story. The story is poverty and food scarcity, food insecurity, and wage deprivation is rising so rapidly that they are unable to meet it because they are supposed to be emergency last-ditch outlets in the first place. The economy is struggling so badly, people are being pushed to the brink so often that food pantries are being pushed to the brink, on top of this government shutdown removing what little benefit and support they were actually giving in the first place. So, and as I said, the $350 million spread across nearly 2 million people amounts to $184. Now, granted, food stamp money, every dollar spent typically generates $2 in revenue, meaning I get the dollar from the tax dollars, I spend the dollar at a local place, and then those employees or the shop owner from that local place spends it locally. It's called the acceleration of money, right? SNAP actually generates revenue. The more SNAP there is, the more revenue gets generated from those who use it. Cutting out that billions of dollars of SNAP is actually impacting the economy by a factor of 2 or more. On top of hurting people who are increasingly in need of these benefits because of the economic decisions that are forcing people to be in need of these benefits. That needs to be the story. And unfortunately, I don't even think Democracy Now! Covered it with that, guys. Right. The national economy. Thank you guys for agreeing with me.
Demand for services. Rachel says they're not sure what impacts are coming to SNAP. We asked Rachel, has any guidance been given by state leaders?
We know something is happening. We're not exactly sure what it will work out in the end. We do know that there are expected cuts and delays to some of that SNAP funding, and it definitely will impact individuals who are in our area.
As Rachel explains, if SNAP benefits are lost, it affects where people allocate their money, and a lot of times
we have insurance and we have childcare and we have housing and food. And usually when you look across all those kind of expenses, food is usually the first one that gets cut. So when we see those benefits getting eliminated, we're going to see more folks in the community going hungry. And that's not just adults, but that's children, that's seniors, that's veterans, and families as well.
And honestly, this video is from Up North Live, which must be a Michigan-specific channel. Only has 30,000 subscribers. This video should be going viral. This video should have way more than 27,000 views. And honestly, a video getting 27,000 views when you only have 29,000 subscribers is I mean, look at oh, you don't see that. The vidIQ shows that is a 100x increase of viewership compared to their normal videos, as it normally would be. Typically, subscribers, it's only like anywhere from 3 to 6%, if you're lucky, convert to viewing every video that you do. It's typically 1% or less that of your subscribership that'll watch your videos. And this one got 100 times their normal viewership and nearly the amount of viewership of their subscribership. So, in fact, I'm going to share this on Facebook as well, and hopefully that gets a little bit of traction. But these are the kinds of stories that truly need to be shared as widely and as rapidly as possible, because this right here, this story and the way they presented it is exactly the issue. They didn't present it from the veneer of the economy, but they did mention enough economic impacts and the correct timelines to where a little bit of critical thinking will get you to the finish line. No, I agree with you, Razor. If you do your economy correctly, it should be self-sustaining within 20 or 30 years. If not sooner. Right, and there are politicians who don't want that, because in America it's a lot easier to control the population, or desirable to control the population, than improve the population and society. Again, it's the age-old question, unfortunately, amongst feudal lords. Is it better to rule with an iron fist and have the people fear you, or is it better to rule with a kind hand and have the people love you? And the answer is, if you don't want your head chopped off or burned at the stake, you do it with love. And I know it sounds stupid to say it that way, but the reality is, if you take care of people, your country, your city, your economy will always grow. It will always prosper. If people have all of their basic needs met, that means they can seek luxury. They can seek entertainment and excess, and they can start going to do other things. If they aren't worried about being able to pay the bills and put food on their table, they will spend their money and their time doing other things, which will only enrich a society further. The more a society empowers its population to thrive, the stronger that society becomes, which is what China discovered 20 years ago. What do you make of the scandal of taking a picture with somebody who was an unindicted co-conspirator of the World Trade Center attack in the 90s? Wow. Did that picture get taken in the 90s, or did it get taken after the Twin Towers? Because in that sense, it's kind of like many people took pictures with Epstein without knowing what Epstein was doing. Many people took pictures with Weinstein without knowing what Weinstein is doing. Many people celebrated Bill Cosby without knowing what he was doing, right? But it turns out that they were monsters, and they had been monsters the entire time, right? For me, I think it's more so, are you aware of who those people were and what they were capable of, or were you ignorant at the time? And if you were ignorant, we can allow the benefit of the doubt, unless there's a history of you being around that individual, at which point you should have at least heard whispers of the evil deeds, and you still chose to hang around, right? Even if, and he isn't, let's be very clear, but let's just say for the sake of argument that Trump was innocent when it comes to Epstein. Let's just say he was innocent and didn't know about what Epstein was doing. How are you going to be best friends with somebody for 15 years, engage in business with this person for 15 years, invite them on your site and him to his site, and this, that, and the other, travel on the thing where all the bad stuff happens, and just miraculously never see it? Like, even if we wanted to give the benefit of the doubt, the likelihood of all of these events culminating into an act of coincidences where he never once witnessed foul play or even a whiff of it is impossible. It is just not possible. And that's, I guess, the difference there. Oh, so right now in the mayoral stuff, then yeah, I would condemn the shit out of that person. Right. I took pictures with many people without knowing who they were. And that's different than having a friendship with that person. Because there's probably pictures of me with Gavin Newsom when I ran for DNC chair. There are absolutely pictures with me and Gavin Newsom. But now I know that he's a scumbag. And that he is no better than any of the other Democrats that are currently vying for power. Well, taking pictures with them without knowing their true nature happens, but being friends with them and not knowing, that's what makes it suspicious. Will this hurt Zoran? More than likely. Because he should know better. And he should know better. I was ignorant when I ran for DNC chair, but now I'm running for Congress. Now I've been streaming. Now I've been active in politics for 10 years. If I end up taking a picture with somebody, I damn well better know who that person is, because I do know better. I do know the consequences of ignorantly taking pictures with vile human beings, right? If I took a picture with J.K. Rowling now, absolutely throw me under the bus. If I took a picture with AOC and it wasn't any like other than in the congressional building or something, if I go on tour with AOC, for instance, that's problematic, right? That is absolutely problematic. If I get a tattoo of a skull and crossbones on my chest, that's hugely problematic. I no longer have the excuse of ignorance or deniability, because I should know better about symbols, about individuals, and about different politics. I should know better. I am at a place in my political career where I should know better. And Mamdani 100% is an elected official who has already won campaigns, who is already in office for an elected position, running for yet another position, having won a primary. He 100% knows who and what to take a picture with, considering he didn't want me to post a picture with him. He knew better than to post a picture of me and him on the internet, because I am far to the left of him, right? So he absolutely would have known better than to take a picture with that guy. As Anna just said, too. Team Red can't condemn him because they don't condemn the president for taking pictures with leaders linked to terrorism, and now this pardon of the crypto guy. Well, that's the thing. Republican hypocrisy knows no bounds. That's not going to stop them from criticizing Mamdani. But Democrats can and should hold him accountable for that, and leftists especially, which goes back to the point of I am extremely wary of Mamdani. He does know better, and he's still doing questionable things. Or saying questionable things, or walking back his aggressive stances. Let's go get angry again.
In just a few hours, a hearing over the
Right.
National Guard's
Exactly,
deployment to
Pop.
Chicago
That's
is
exactly
set to
right.
resume. This morning, the judge overseeing the case and who temporarily blocked the deployment earlier this month gave the parties time to figure out the next steps. It's happening as the restraining order keeping troops out of the city expires tomorrow and as the Supreme Court reviews the case. Several protests, some of which have turned contentious, have erupted outside of an ICE facility just outside of Chicago. We're joined now by Illinois State Representative Han Win, who says that he was had a gun pointed at him yesterday by ICE. We do want to show you a part of this moment from the vantage point of Representative Win's friend, who was a passenger in the car at the time and started videotaping afterward. You don't see a gun, but you do hear some of what unfolded.
I'm State Representative.
The guy in the blue shirt seems fucking terrified. I'm just throwing that out there.
Han Win. I'm State Representative Han Win.
These guys are telling us to stop following.
I'm State Representative Han Win.
They're U.S. Customs and Border Patrol.
I'm State Representative Han
There's
Win.
3 agents behind us. Why is my window not working?
I'm State Representative Han Win.
Somehow they're able to open my windows. These people are, there's 3 officers in front of us, 3
I'm
officers
State
behind us.
Representative Han Win.
He has,
Now, this is what I find extremely questionable. Why is an ICE agent using their cell phone to record civilians when they should be wearing body cams outright? Meaning, I think these are deputized bounty hunters. I don't think these are actual ICE agents or police officers or Border Patrol or anything. I think these are hired guns. I think these are essentially mercenaries being hired by the federal government to terrorize our streets, because otherwise they would be issued body cams and be made to wear them. And they also wouldn't be going out of their way to videotape the personnel, because they're going to try and use this as a weapon against them. If you were wearing a body cam, you know that cannon will be used against you. So again, the ignorance of being a bounty hunter or a mercenary and thinking that this is going to make you look better. That is why I do not think that a lot of the agents that are covering their faces and acting out of pocket are actual agents, that they are in fact mercenaries.
State Representative Han Nguyen.
There's 3
I'm
officers
State
behind us.
Representative Han Nguyen.
Okay, I'm gonna keep following this guy.
And see, they're taking pictures of, so he was taking pictures of the VIN, and he was taking pictures of both passengers to profile them and harass them later on down the road.
Just put a gun.
Yeah, they just had a gun. We're at Montrose and Kimball now, telling us to stop following them. I guess the other car behind me was following me. I didn't realize.
Yeah. Also, extremely dangerous, by the way. I will not recommend. I recommend direct action in many different ways. I recommend you protesting. I recommend you using your community apps and channels and groups to warn your community that ICE is in that area. But these people have already shown a propensity to engage in violence, up to and including killing people, up to and including hitting them with cars, and then arresting you, right? And getting away with it, even though it made the national news. So, I do not encourage you to tail ICE for several reasons. One, it's never just that vehicle. As they said, you didn't realize you were getting tailed. Unless you are, I don't know, trained in tailing somebody and being aware of if you yourself are getting tailed, don't do that. You are only putting yourself in danger. Now, I get it. You want the credibility of going after ICE and videotaping them and harassing them, but your life is in danger. So I am not going to encourage that activity. If you're going to do it, though, mind your surroundings. That's all I'm going to say.
CNN received a statement from the Department of Homeland Security Assistant Secretary Tricia McLaughlin, which reads, Representative Nguyen was stopped not once, but twice for stalking law enforcement and attempting to interfere with operations. He was given a warning the first time he was stopped, and he ignored that warning, forcing agents to get out of their car a second time to assess if he was a threat. This behavior is unbecoming of a public servant and is just another example of sanctuary politicians putting our officers at.
Now, see, that's all propaganda. That's propaganda of the state highlighting and justifying its authoritarianism. What CNN is doing is trying to counter that. Now, by giving it this much airtime and the credibility that it doesn't deserve, CNN is giving credence to this kind of response. What the reporter, the one that's at the desk, should have said is, this is the state's authoritarian response to harassing a citizen engaging in their lawful rights, right? Anything to disparage this rhetoric, anything, any words whatsoever would undermine it. But instead, it's being given equal weight to whatever this interview is about to be.
And State Representative Nguyen joins us now here in the studio. I'm going to ask you to respond to that in a second. But first, because this video doesn't show this entire interaction, can you take us through what happened?
And thank you so much, Brianna, for having me here today. We were out yesterday making sure that we talked to our local small businesses about their rights as civilians, right? And we wanted to let them know that they have the right to remain silent, they have the right to an attorney when they're interacting with ICE agents. And that's what we've been doing as part of the Rapid Response Network with the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights. So we received a report yesterday that a landscaper was captured by ICE agents in my district, in my neighborhood of Uptown. And so we went to the location to, again, provide assistance and to make sure that folks know their rights. And so at one point we were sandwiched in between 2 ICE cars, one in front of us and one behind us, where an ICE agent went.
Another thing worthy of note is that those vehicles were unmarked vehicles. This isn't using the Department of ICE with decals and the badge or anything. These are unmarked vehicles, probably from rental locations like Enterprise, being used to engage in terrorist activities in our homeland.
Into the passenger side of the car, which I was in, and he pointed a gun directly at my face without any warning whatsoever, and then told us to identify ourselves, of which I then said, I'm an elected official. I'm State Representative Han Nguyen. We were within...
Okay, but buddy, you were panicking. You were repeating yourself. I'm Representative Han Nguyen. I'm Representative Han Nguyen. Like, hands up, don't shoot. But, to be fair, the only person I know that had a gun pointed in their face by a cop and actually got angry about it is me. So I'm apparently a broken individual. His response was actually a normal, expected response when a person points a gun in your face with intent. So just throwing that out.
The rights to do what we have to do to inform our neighbors of their rights. And at that point in time, they wanted to bash in the windows of the car as well.
How did you know they wanted to bash in the windows of the car?
They said literally at that moment that they were like, we're going to bash these windows in.
This is before the recording starts?
This is before the recording starts. That's absolutely right. And so they had a gun pointed to my face on the passenger side before the recording starts. So when my colleague started recording, they then realized that there was a camera to them. And again, these were ICE agents who are wearing masks, you know, their badges.
And again, I'm fairly certain these are bounty hunters that have been deputized.
Aren't very clear. And so they then withdrew the gun away from the car, and then they went away. And so when we, again, went to make sure that we inform our neighbors of their rights, and again, we were passing construction workers, landscapers, they then again stopped us and told us that we could not do that and that they were gonna, again, detain us, and of which they did not.
Had you...
So, something, again, do not get in a vehicle and chase down ICE agents. You may very well get shot. At the very least, your car might be vandalized heavily, and you're going to be on the hook for it. And I cannot stress enough, if you ignore that warning, and you do it anyway, never do it alone, and be recording the entire time you are driving. From the second you get into your car and you are heading towards the ICE agent, be recording. And then as you are following them, continue to record. Go live, in fact. Right? Because they can take your phone and delete the video. But if it's live, people can screen share, they can do any number of things at the same time, and then that'll preserve the video. What I'm getting at is, do not do this. Don't. I am being so serious. Do not do this. You are not trained, you are not skilled, you are not qualified to do this. You don't have the equipment, you don't have the resources, you don't have the legal backing, you don't have the political authority and weight to get away with doing this. You are a civilian living in an authoritarian police state. You are living in Nazi Germany, and the Nazis are the ones that you are trying to chase down. You will fail, you will lose. The only reason why this man is alive or not detained is because he was a state representative, for one, and he was not alone, for two, and that second person was able to start recording before the violence occurred. So I cannot stress enough, you are not qualified. I am not qualified. And I served in the military, and I know what detention processes look like. I know what vehicle inspections look like, and I know what basic law enforcement detainment looks like. Because I was a security forces augmentee. It gave me an attaboy on my EPR. And I was just doing flightline stuff. I wasn't like actually being a cop, so let's be clear on that. What I'm saying is, even if you do have some training, some experience, you are just a person. And people like Hassan, who challenged ICE at the airport and this, that, and the other, only got away with it because he's a multimillionaire. That's it. That's the only reason why. Otherwise, we would have never heard from that person again. The only reason why he is alive or not detained is because he is a state representative and he was lucky enough that his passenger was videoing or recording when the encounter. That being said, if you are going to ignore me, the safest way to go about doing this is to be recording from the moment you are in the vehicle. And then, of course, exercising your rights, right? Don't get violent, don't get confrontational, but absolutely emphasize the fact that you have the right to do this, the right to record, the right to due process, so on and so forth, okay? But do not do this. But if you are, that would be the way to do it. Well, it's clear that ICE agents don't check their brains to ensure mental stability because they carry weapons against Americans. Well, again, hence why we are a police state and why we are in a consolidation phase of fascism and not entering into that phase of fascism. Because again, if the Obama administration had even attempted to do this, there would have been riots in the streets from Democrats and Republicans. If Clinton had attempted to do this, there would be riots in the streets from Democrats and Republicans. If Bush Jr. had attempted to do this, riots in the streets from Republicans and Democrats. The fact that Trump implemented a Jan 6 coup d'etat and got away with it, unmolested whatsoever, is nothing short of a miracle, but did set the stage for this happening. Again, if Biden tried it, there would have been riots in the streets from both sides of the house. The only reason why there aren't riots in the streets over this behavior now, during this administration, is because it took that first administration of planting the seeds, watering those seeds during the Biden administration, and then harvesting the fruit during this administration that allowed it to occur. And we can argue that the seeds were sown for ICE at the very least back in 2012. Or was it under the Clinton administration? No, when was ICE formed? That's the question. March 2003, which would have been under the Bush administration. So, Bush technically started the ICE department, right? So it took 22 years of those seeds being planted amongst the other erosion of our democracy and our rights with the Patriot Act, with bailing out the banks, the 2008 recession, the war on terror, so on and so forth, right? It was all these things coming together now, 22 years later, that are allowing it to happen. It didn't happen overnight. It happened with deliberate planning and processes.
Encountered ICE or immigration officials before in your district? I mean, have you been making a practice of checking them out as they are doing apprehensions or reported apprehensions?
So we have been a part of the Rapid Response Network to make sure that we're out there talking to our neighbors about their rights. And when we receive tips of ICE agents in our district, in our neighborhoods, it's our job to make sure that we inform our neighbors of their rights. So I have not seen these ICE agents in my neighborhoods until yesterday when they appeared, and they've been really making sure that they've been expanding their appearance throughout our district.
So this was the first time
This is the first time I've
them.
actually encountered 6 ICE agents.
You saw that response from the Department of Homeland Security. Do you take issue with anything they said?
Absolutely. I
see. I do not. Maybe I am being a little too far left, Che Guevara, cigar in the mouth, prop in the hand, right? But the way she asked that question, you saw what the Department of Homeland's response was. Do you take issue with any of that? She should not have asked that question blandly. She should have said, well, you saw the Department of Homeland's response. Do you take issue with that? She should be more energized, in my opinion. I don't know. Maybe she is doing it the right way. Maybe she's giving him the opportunity to get incensed and get riled up. Or maybe, I don't know, it just feels like I feel like she could have phrased it even differently. If she was going to hit deadpan it, well, you saw the state's response, or just dismissing it outright. Well, you saw the response. Do you have anything to diminish the validity of the legality or the validity of the act itself or the statement itself? Just anything to diminish that statement in her question is something that I wanted to hear and see.
I think what they said is an absolute lie. I think if they were being truthful, they should release the body cameras of these ICE agents and what they actually did to me and to my colleague, right? So I think that's the first thing, is we want to see that there's transparency in this process. And I think the other thing is we are within our rights to make sure that we can tell our neighbors about their rights. This is a best practice that's been done in Illinois and in Chicago to make sure that we're out there informing our neighbors of their rights to not speak to them, of their rights to speak to an attorney, of their rights to not sign anything if they do not understand the language or the document of which they're signing. So we were within the laws and within our rights to make sure that we are able to tell our neighbors about their rights.
So you see this as providing assistance.
Yes.
And DHS sees this as you putting their agents in danger, right? You're at an impasse, I think, on how you are viewing this. I do want to ask you, though, because there are many...
Even he gave her the eyebrow, like, bitch, whose side are you fucking on right now? Like, why are you asking the question that way? Like, yes, we're at an impasse. I am against fascism. I am against boots marching in my fucking community, terrorizing my citizens. I represent this district, and these motherfuckers are goose-stepping. Zeig mir deine Papieren. Yeah, I fucking have a problem with that, and so should you, and so should every American. Again, maybe that's why I'm not fit for news or video, right? I'm not made for the news, apparently, because I would be losing my mind. I would be visibly enraged. I would be increasing the rage with every syllable that's coming out of her mouth.
People who feel as you do, that you are providing assistance, and they may want to model what they do after you, right? There are a lot of people doing that. Do you have any concerns about them doing that and it not going, I mean, this is a scary situation, but it not going as well, quite frankly. You identified yourself, and ultimately you were permitted to leave. You're a state representative. With that, I think, may come some privilege. Do you have concerns for people where their interaction with officers may not end that way?
Look, this is not about me. This is what happened to me. And I think what's important when we're telling folks about their rights is that we push out the salute method. And the salute method basically tells civilians that when we are encountering ICE agents in our neighborhoods...
It's cute when a civilian tries to use military terms and then regards other civilians as civilians, because he clearly doesn't... he doesn't give much credibility to the salute method, given that it's a military protocol. We encourage the salute method, which is used by the military to report troop movements in a quick, efficient manner to whatever team is waiting to hear it on the other end of the radio. And we have the rights to do this, and it's the only thing we have to do. We can't just sit here and allow them to continue to act with impunity. But he's also not answering the question, because the question was, do you think others are going to be in danger for doing this? And the answer is yes. Comma. However, comma, it is our duty as citizens. It is our constitutional obligation to uphold our Bill of Rights. And this is the way to do it. And we like to use the salute method. Again, I guess maybe I'm armchair quarterbacking, but at the same time, this is how I have responded in interviews. This is how I have responded in debates. This is how I would actually handle this situation. This isn't me just talking out of my ass. We have videos proving that this is how I talk and this is how I react when I think the reporter or the questioner is acting like a jackass. Hell, I've even been held at gunpoint by a cop, and that's how I responded to them. What the fuck do you think you're doing? What is the charge? Why are you arresting me? Who the hell do you think you are? What are you charging me with? I'm a veteran. I have rights. What do you think you're doing? I know you're doing this wrong. Go ahead and shoot me. Like, anyway. Do you have any issues with a gun being pointed at your head? Right, exactly. Razor, that's how this interview seems to be going. Do you think it's safe for people to talk to follow people with a propensity for violence? No. Why would you ask me that? Anyway.
We want to make sure that you can pull out a camera to record what they're doing and record what they're doing to our neighbors. And again, these are people that they're picking up off the streets indiscriminately, right? They're picking up working families, working people who are out there trying to earn an honest day work. And so it's racial profiling. You know, they're picking out our neighbors. And so we need to make sure that we are able to record them, record their actions, which is illegal. And we need to also make sure that we provide the safety to all of our neighbors as well.
Can you?
Yeah, but dude, I'll give the journalist this much credit. She was asking, do you think it's safe for them to do that? And he's saying, no, he's saying we need to do this because it's our rights. But he is not providing any sort of suggestion as to how or why it is safe or how or why to make it safe, which is exactly what I did a few minutes ago where I said, do not do this. But if you're going to do it, the only marginally safe way to do it, which will at least better than 50% ensure your safety, is going in groups, pairs minimum, but groups ideally, right? Like a full car, and everybody recording out the windows. That's the safest way to do it. A full car. A minimum of 2 people with 1 person recording from the very beginning. And whoever's doing the driving, having their phone on record, but obviously safely. You know, you don't want to drive and be distracted. So that's not what's being discussed here. And he's not answering that question because I don't think he understands how much danger he was in and how absolutely fucking lucky he was to be alive today.
Address that discrepancy that they're saying you're putting agents in danger where you feel that you are providing assistance to residents.
Yes, and again, this is a best practice that has been done in Illinois with the Illinois Coalition for Immigrant and Refugee Rights and OCAD, where we're able to train our...
I'm not gonna lie. It's shit like this, people like this representing resistance that make people not want to participate in resistance. If he's the leader of the resistance of Chicago, well, maybe I do know a little bit too much because I've actually had training in law enforcement and detainment and use of force and all that fun stuff. I don't know. I look at this guy not being able to answer the question about how to formulate an actual resistance plan and how to keep people safe and how to actually answer the question that's being asked. And I'm like, dude, this is the face of Antifa, the face of resistance right now. I mean, I would be very, like, where's the pink-haired butch lesbian who has been on the front lines since fucking Occupy, you know? Where's that person being interviewed on CNN with her backpack and vest of medical and legal and everything else ready to go, who has been on the front lines of protests left, right, and center for decades? Where's that person? Where's the Marine veteran who's coming off of 2 tours, who's like, no, fuck this shit. This is how you follow, how you trail somebody, how you shake a tail, and how you stand up to an enemy armed resistance or enemy force, right? They picked the state representative who is completely out of his depth. Completely out of his depth. He is a turtle on a fence. Turtle in a tree. He is a turtle in a tree. Maybe he has great intentions. I'll give him that. He has more cojones than most civilians who probably would have broken down in tears and shitting themselves. Unironically. He had a rifle pointed in his face, and at the very least, he repeated his name and his title. You know what? Props. For a person who has never encountered that situation, they did infinitely better than most others would. And his partner, his colleague, who immediately not immediately, but eventually started recording, again, that is a level of testicular and spinal fortitude that I wish any Democrat possessed. So those two happen to actually have the spirit of a warrior. I'll give them that. I 100% will give them that credit because it is deserved. But they do not know. He does not know what he's talking about. And the fact that they put him on CNN, gave him 133,000 views, is not... Well, it's also not helping the narrative of the administration saying that this violent, well-organized Antifa is attacking and holding back our ICE agents. Dude is scared out of his fucking mind and damn near in shock. But that's the face of the resistant. That's the violent Antifa. It's like, no, buddy. No, that's me. You don't want me on CNN after being surviving an encounter with ICE. You don't want me on CNN. Because I will be Che Guevara within seconds of being asked questions. Like, within seconds. So, all of which is to say. Obviously scary. Obviously escalating and obviously extremely dangerous. Do not ever act alone. Do not ever act alone. So now it's on the subject of ICE.
Protest happening right here beside me. As you see, they have gathered here outside of Federal Plaza in the wake of this enforcement action that was happening on Canal Street, just a few blocks away from me earlier this afternoon. And you can see now the NYPD has sort of sealed off this area. This is the entrance to Federal Plaza where some of those detainees were taken earlier this afternoon. We actually got a heads up early today around 2 o'clock that ICE was going to be on Canal Street. And once that happened, we came down here and witnessed several people of African descent being taken into custody. What happened from there really turned into chaos and mayhem, something it seems that ICE did not bargain for as people surrounded those agents who had their faces covered and they had ballistic vests on. They ultimately were forced to retreat here to Federal Plaza, and then the spontaneous protest is what emerged in the aftermath. You can see from the video several people taken into custody, a lot of protest, and people who were just passing by on the street joined in to try and stop ICE.
Oh, that's the lady
really
on her way
gives
from work.
the temperature of how New Yorkers are feeling about ICE enforcement action, as many people just stopped in their tracks. People were going to school, people were coming home from work, or just commuting and stopped to scream at these ICE agents, pulled out their phones, started recording and telling them to leave. So what ultimately did happen is they retreated here to Federal Plaza just a few blocks away, and several people got into some scuffles with ICE officers. They were also then detained and arrested and brought into Federal Plaza. We spoke with the executive director of the New York City Immigration Coalition. He was there on Canal Street, and this is what he told us he witnessed.
So, I just kind of felt compelled to watch all of that because this is happening in broad day. I can't help but compare it to Kristallnacht was the night of broken glass, but Gestapo arresting Jewish Germans in Germany, broad daylight. So that's another one, Kristallnacht. I guess specifically that's the one that always comes up. So, but it began in the early morning of the 9th. Arrests were carried out by officers of the Gestapo or Kriminalpolizei. These groups collaborated with the SA or SS, but mobs of Gentiles in Leipzig also dragged men out of their homes and brought them to the police. Rioters would split into small groups and march through their neighborhoods, banging on the doors of homes, shouting, Juden heraus, or raus in ihr... Well, I'm not repeating that. They broke down many doors of homes and dragged Jews out if they did not promptly to the commands. They then proceeded to violate the Jewish population on the streets, and they did this very early in the morning or late at night during both days of Kristallnacht. So, granted, Kristallnacht being the specific event, which is heinous, the idea that these things were happening in broad daylight and consistently, worse still that Germans were actually participating and aiding and abetting the ICE officers. We haven't seen... I don't think we've seen... Yeah. I don't think that has happened yet. But to the fact that they are brazenly marching down streets and detaining people in broad daylight, that is absolutely for the shock factor, for the terror factor, for the fear factor of immigrant communities or people of color in America. So, I'm glad that Americans are stepping up. I'm glad that people immediately reacted to it and pushed back. But things are only going to get more out of pocket. These agents are eventually going to be given orders or take it upon themselves to fire upon crowds. And when that happens, we really won't know what the next step will be. Because either it's going to result in immediate violent backlash of the masses and major civil uprisings across the country, or it's going to instill a significant amount of fear in everybody, and resistance is going to plummet dramatically. Obviously, the administration is banking on the latter to happen, but I'd rather not have and witness any loss of life when engaging with these agents. The other thing that's perfectly possible is that when you see ICE agents, right, the 5, the 10, the 20, if you swarm them in groups of hundreds or thousands, you can unarrest and undetain the individual. And that's the things we need to start doing. And yes, we do need to start stripping ICE of their weapons, their gear, and their vehicles. But that's only possible in significantly high numbers. And I mean factors of 10 or even 100 more than there are agents. And we're not at that point yet. And I don't know that we will ever get to that point. But if we're going to resist ICE, the only way to do that is with significantly high numbers. Now, am I encouraging violence against ICE? No. Am I recommending it? No. I'm saying if we need that kind of resistance, if it gets to that point, those are the numbers we're going to need. And we should be making it as difficult for them to do their jobs. Yeah, following them is disruptive. So is just stopping your car and parking parallel and blocking the road outright. They might arrest you, they might detain you for doing that, but at the same time, it is your right to interfere. It's your duty and obligation to interfere because they are violating individual rights. So it's kind of one of these things where don't take direct action against them, but if you don't, what are we actually doing? We are complicitly allowing this to happen. So there are several things to take away from this, right? The spontaneous protests, outstanding. If these spontaneous protests happen, we need to converge as a society and join in on these protests. And then we need to keep them going. A single moment, a single drop in the bucket, right? One, like this much water, can you see that? That much water in the cup is how much this protest is. What we need is to have a full cup of protests across the country and then continuing to fill that cup with more protest. Whoops, I didn't actually mean to pour. Until it starts overflowing and turning into actual change. Dang it, I'm going to have to smoke this now because I don't know if you make a cigar wet if it'll start to mold. Anyway, all theatrics and props aside, we just simply need to be more active. We need to be more consistent in our activities, and they need to last much longer than the hour or two or the day or two that erupt naturally. If this right here, this protest continues to grow and continues to expand over the course of 90 days, ICE will not be able to function in New York City. And that's what we need to see. That's what we need to do. And that would be a prime example of an organic movement functioning. But we don't have that reaction to protest. We participate in the moment, but we don't build upon it thereafter, and then that energy fizzles. And that's what we need to be counteracting.
Have you ever seen 50 to 100 federal agents mobbing a street and beating up people in the street? Because that's exactly what just happened. Targeting street vendors who are simply trying to make a living in our city and arresting them today. As ordinary New Yorkers see other New Yorkers being hurt and vilified by these individuals. Of course, anyone who sees someone being wrongfully targeted is going to take some form of action. And to see military vehicles driving down the streets of New York City, we don't need boots on the ground.
Oh, I guess that was the end of that video. This is another video on that topic. But this is more broadly on ICE, so I think we should watch this one next, especially as we're closing in on the
chaos and clashes on the streets of U.S. cities amid intensifying ICE raids.
Yo, chill! Get out of here, man. She's not even doing anything.
In Chicago, 7 people arrested by federal agents in a community known locally as Mexico of the Midwest. Border Patrol Chief Greg Bovino was there. Local leaders condemning the action.
This is not about border policy.
But see, this again, and I've said this several times in this stream alone, condemning it with words when you are an elected official and not taking action are two very different fucking things. One is performance, one is action. Now, I will say this. If you are an elected official and you actually have a spine or a sense of morals or ethics, you need to use your position and ensure that ICE cannot operate in your location under your area of responsibility. And if you do not do this, then you are complicit. And when I do find myself in a position of power or authority to hold you accountable for your complicit behavior to allowing this terrorism to occur on American soil, you will be held accountable. So take your pick. It might be an empty threat now, but it will not be in the very near future.
It's about power, fear.
It follows confusion Wednesday in a popular shopping area in New York City's Chinatown following a similar raid. DHS calling it a targeted operation.
True Steel, welcome. I guess that's why you're so late to the streams. You're working. So that answers that. Did we talk about the Nazis? Yes, that was the first thing we talked about. I'll get back to this video. Actually, I can just duplicate, can't I? We covered the Maine and how he was a Marine who got the skull
Democratic
and crossbones,
USA.
and how they kept showing him shirtless. Oh wait, that must have been the other video. And now after the big backlash, he immediately got it covered up.
What is that?
After 22 years. But they did show... Oh, and Bernie Sanders dismissed it altogether.
Whether or not a guy should get a tattoo removed. Sorry.
So, that was part of it. Where's his drunken dancing video? So, there's a video here where they showed him in his freaking underwear, drunk with his shirt off. I guess, well, I'm not gonna go that hard looking for it. Was it not this clip? I definitely thought it was this clip. Whatever. But we covered him, and then we covered
Paul Ingrassia.
Paul Ingrassia. This lady also covered the fact that a lot of the young Republicans that had their texts leaked from that Discord channel have also lost their jobs. The Nazi running for Congress? Yeah, that must have been Graham Platner. Yeah. That is the problem with Bernie. Again, he's losing his credibility too in my eyes. So, anyway, it's always an honorable mention to mock people who have had Nazi affiliation. But the believability of whether or not that they were unawares is where I'm very questioning that.
Resulting in 9 arrests of suspects in the country illegally. It's a scene that's become familiar in communities all across the country, with tensions rising amid social media scrutiny. Videos of arrests and confrontations going viral. Sometimes with families looking on. From confrontations on the streets to inside workplaces, like this Nebraska meatpacking plant in June. The Trump administration have maintained their actions are justified.
ICE is doing their job, and they're not going to stop doing their job.
Yeah, but here's the beauty of that. Honestly, as much as I find what ICE is doing reprehensible, disgusting, and extremely Nazi-esque, keep doing it. Go ahead. Honestly, keep doing it and keep digging yourselves deeper and deeper into your own holes. Because following orders and just following the law and doing what we're supposed to be doing while violating people's due process and, you know, the profiling and their rights as individuals, go ahead. Keep doing it. I encourage ICE to even escalate and do worse things, because when they are finally held accountable, and they will be, it'll be that much more to bury them with. Now, do I actually wish harm upon anyone? Of course not. But they're going to escalate. It's going to happen. They're going to continue to do this, and they're going to continue to justify it with the same Nazi defense that they used in Nuremberg. So we need to start pushing back. Whether it's by saying the Nuremberg defense didn't save Nazis, if you don't want to be compared to them, don't act like them. Whether it's those kinds of things, or whether we are just, again, once a protest happens organically, keeping that energy going, one of those things must happen. We cannot allow the escalation to go unchallenged. We need to meet it with extremely higher numbers. We need to be present. Otherwise, the escalation will continue up into and including violence and assault and possibly even murder. And at that point, any resistance will be treated with that same respect. And at that point, you only have the option of resisting violently or, you know, staying out of harm's way. And that's why now is the time. If ever there was a time, if you are just waiting for somebody to say, if now is the time, let me be the one. Now is the time. Now is the time to protest. Now is the time to resist. Now is the time to gather ye masses and resist this administration in full force, in numbers, over a long period of time. Now is the time. It is officially the time. If you want to put a date stamp on it, 9:47 p.m., 10/23/25. October 23rd, 2025 at 9:47 p.m. is the time. This is the moment. This is the point in history where your actions will determine the future consequences and the ability for you to look at your children or grandchildren and say, I was there at that moment and I took a stand. And I chose to do something about the corruption and the cruelty that was taking place. It was on this day and on this moment where I took a stand. So, we are not even halfway through the video list. So let's see if we can... I think this
There's a new round of No Kings protests planned for tomorrow in L.A., and the LAPD is asking a judge to lift a court order restricting their potential use of force against media covering the event.
Now, let's hear that again.
Restricting their potential use of force against media covering the event. Order restricting their potential use of force against media covering the event.
The LAPD is requesting that the court restricts a use of force order against the media. Los Angeles Police Department is asking the judge to allow the Los Angeles Police Department to engage in use of force against the media. In the United States of America, in the year 2025, law enforcement in a blue state, in a blue city, is asking a blue judge to let them use of force against the media. That was the request that was made. Now, some of you might think, well, it's hyperbole to say that we're a police state. Police are there to protect and serve the community. Whatever. The police asked a judge to use force against the media, which is a war crime. Media are never, ever, ever lawful targets. There is never a situation, never a circumstance where killing a journalist or a member of the media is ever justified. Ever. They are never lawful targets. Never. And the fact that law enforcement is trying to do that should fill everybody with fear. That should send shivers down your spine. That should fill you with an abject amount of rage as well. That your rights, that your constitution, that your country is being threatened so openly, so brazenly by a member of that government to violate your rights. And of course, that's not on the news. This is LAist, some guy with a small following who isn't even able to monetize his channel because you need 4,000 subs now. This guy cannot even monetize his channel, and this is the only person talking about this issue. That is where we are in fascism in America.
Hey, it's Morning Edition host Austin Cross. A U.S. district judge had ruled that the department could no longer use so-called less lethal weapons against journalists and protesters. But the LAPD says that ruling creates, quote, undefined and operationally impracticable standards. So attorneys for the media plan to fight that request.
Which Anna said that request got blocked, as it fucking should have been. They literally showed their intent to attack the media and use force against them. And you couldn't find any other videos. Right. And that's the point. We are so deep into fascism that the police, right? The actual boots, right? When we're talking about Don't Tread on Me and boots, we are talking about the police. We're talking about ICE and the military. This isn't, okay, I'm using it as a prop, but those are the Don't Tread on Me's. And they're the ones asking to use force and violence against reporters. They are asking for permission to use force against journalists. And the judge was like, absolutely fucking not. But they tried. Which means either A, they're going to ignore the judge regardless, or B, they're going to try again in the future with a different judge. Which is why we need to be out there protesting. Whenever you see an organic protest arise, join it. Participate. At least share it on social media or Facebook, right? If you're not comfortable going to a protest that could escalate with tear gas and arrests, okay, I respect that. At least share it in your community so others who are willing to go through that can. because we need the numbers. And at a certain point, there will be too many people there to where the police or the agents won't have the courage to fire upon the crowds, because the crowds will be too massive. It'll immediately turn into riots, regardless of if there's tear gas. Okay? So, we need to start pushing our numbers into these streets. That's what we need to be doing. I guess we got time for one more video. Dang, that's a lot of pressure. Let's do China. China's leadership is
loved
changing.
playing with robots as a kid. He never dreamed he'd one day run a Beijing-based company which creates customizable humanoid machines.
Why we want to build a robot like a human being is because...
Okay, that's not what I was expecting. Listen. Shut the fuck up, Zhang Shipu. We're not building Terminators on planet Earth before we have given equal rights to all human beings on planet Earth, when your country also has issues with human rights violations between specific demographics. Okay? We're not going to build robots and treat them like slaves and give them the ability to look like humans and act like humans. We're just not going to fucking do that. So, not what I thought this movie was about. So let's try a happy video then. So, if this even bothers to load.
Eileen Collins made history as the first woman to pilot and command a spacecraft, paving the way for future generations. And now she's the subject of a new documentary called Spacewoman, which looks at her remarkable achievements and trailblazing career. Our science editor, Rebecca Morell, went to meet her.
3 engines up and burning. 3, 2, 1... and liftoff of Space Shuttle Discovery.
She's the woman who smashed through the glass ceiling and then just kept on going. Eileen Collins made history as the first woman to pilot and command a spacecraft.
In a way, it's going to be hard to come home because I do like being in space so much. It feels almost natural to be up here.
Now she's the subject of a new documentary, Spacewoman.
So take a look here. That's the heat shield on the bottom. You can see where there's some of those pieces broke off.
And we met her at the Science Museum.
I was reading a magazine article on the Gemini astronauts. I was probably 9 years old, and I thought, that's the coolest thing. That's what I want to do. Of course, there were no women back then, but I just thought, I'll be a lady astronaut.
But that little girl set her sights even higher. She wanted to be at the controls of a spacecraft. And the only way to achieve this was to become a test pilot in the military. After a decade in the Air Force, she'd made it and was accepted by NASA. She was chosen to pilot her first mission in 1995, and the eyes of the world were on her.
As the first woman to pilot the space shuttle, I didn't want people to say, oh, look, the woman made a mistake. Because it wasn't just about me, it was about the women to follow me. And I wanted there to be a reputation for women pilots that was, hey, they're really good.
She was so good, she was quickly promoted to commander. A job she juggled with being a mum to 2 young children.
I felt like I had the 2 best jobs in the world. I was a mother and I was a space shuttle commander. I'm going to tell you, it is harder to be a parent than to be a space shuttle commander.
You know what's funny, though, about that? And I think we can stop it right there, because I guess this is about a documentary, which is great. More power to her. Eileen Collins, right? But I 100% believe it is easier to pilot a spacecraft than raising children, because a spacecraft only has so many buttons, so many nozzles, so many levers, so many switches, and if you use them in the right way, it will do something that you want it to do. Whereas a child, I mean, When in human history has a child actually done what the parent intended the child to do? When the parent told the child to do something, right? If anything, even if the child did attempt to follow the directions that was given to them by the adult, how many children have gotten it right the first time? Exactly the way that the adult intended. Never. And if you say otherwise, you're lying. So, I'm glad we finally got to end one of our streams on a happy note. Recognition for the first female commander of NASA, Eileen Collins. Feature-length documentary called Space Woman, which isn't linked, unironically. And please check that out. Not that I'm endorsing it or anything. I guess I am, but like I'm not getting paid to do that. So, with that, we have drawn to a close. I appreciate everybody joining us today on our Recap Thursday. I know most of our stream today was pretty intense, pretty aggressive, and that is the world we live in, unfortunately. So I can't apologize for that. What I can say is hopefully as the days and weeks continue on, we can find more, shall we say, inspiring works where people take this shit seriously and are actually pushing back in a way that we want them to push back and aren't just being government bootlickers, right? So with that being said, it is the end of our stream. We stream Tuesdays through Thursdays from 7 p.m. to 10 p.m. Eastern. Tuesdays are about U.S. politics, Wednesdays are about global politics, and Thursdays are a recap of either things that we missed or things that have transpired between then. In the future, we are planning to do Friday and Saturdays again, but that is going to be dependent on, well, my ability to do them. So, I look forward to that. Have a great weekend. And I guess, with final thoughts from Razor here. Oh, the raising the children part, right. Yeah, it's hard to raise kids with propaganda in the school system, right? So, anyway, on that final note, have a great weekend. I will see you on Tuesday. Samuel Ronan, your president.